The dust devil spun across the barren cemetery like a drunken dancer kicking up red dirt that settled on everything. The warped wooden crosses, the cracked leather of Eleanor Whitman's boots, and the fresh mound of earth where her husband Matthew now rested. Promise Valley, Arizona territory had earned its name in mockery these past 3 years. Nora, as everyone called her, remained kneeling long after the pastor and townsfolk had departed. The relentless sun beat down on her black mourning dress, but she barely noticed. 30 years old and widowed with nothing but a failing ranch and a mortgage paper that didn't care about her grief. "I swear to you, Matthew," she whispered, her voice raw from 3 days of tears. "I'll save our home. I won't let them take what we built." In a sudden burst of desperation, she pulled the silver locket from around her neck, a Whitman family heirloom, the last valuable thing she owned, and smashed it against her husband's headstone. The metal dented but didn't break. "Damn it all," she cried, her composure finally shattering. "You promised me we'd grow old together. You promised." As if in answer, the earth beneath her trembled. Nora scrambled backward as a small fissure opened near the grave, and from it emerged the most unlikely miracle, a thin trickle of water, clear as crystal, bubbling up from the parched ground. Nora stared, disbelieving. Water in the worst drought Promise Valley had seen in 50 years. She reached out with trembling fingers, half expecting it to vanish like a mirage. But the liquid was cool and real against her skin. "Matthew," she whispered, though she knew it was foolish. Yet something about this felt like more than coincidence. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of rain, though there wasn't a cloud in the endless blue sky. Nora clutched the dented locket, suddenly reluctant to leave this small miracle. But the sun was setting, and even grief had to make way for practicality. She gathered herself, brushed the dirt from her skirts, and mounted her husband's favorite mare. The ride back to the Whitman ranch stretched like an eternity, each hoof beat counting down to an uncertain future. The Whitman place sat in a hollow between 2 ridges, sheltered from the worst of the winds. Her grandfather had chosen good grass when there was rain, natural windbreaks, and once the most reliable well in 3 counties. The house wasn't much adobe and timber that needed patching, but the corrals were solid, and the small herd of breeding stock had been their future. Or had been until Matthew caught the fever while negotiating horse sales in Phoenix. Now everything balanced on the edge of ruin. Nora dismounted slowly, feeling twice her age. The ranch hands, what few remained, had gone into town for supplies. The emptiness pressed against her like a physical weight. Inside the house, she lit a lamp against the gathering darkness and stared at the mortgage notice spread on the kitchen table. 14 days until the bank foreclosed. 14 days to find a miracle bigger than a trickle of water by a grave. She pressed her hand against her still flat belly, where the secret she hadn't yet shared with anyone grew. Matthew's child. Their child. She'd discovered her condition the day after burying him, a cruel twist that felt like both blessing and curse. "We'll find a way," she promised the unborn child. "Your father built this place for you. I won't let it go without a fight." Sleep came in fitful bursts, haunted by dreams of running through endless desert, searching for water that evaporated at her touch. She woke before dawn, determined to face whatever came next. The Promise Valley Harvest Auction sprawled behind Callahan's saloon, where folks gathered like buzzards around a carcass. Lanterns swayed in the evening breeze, casting shadows that danced between makeshift corrals. The smell hit Nora, first sweat whiskey and that particular stink of desperation that clung to hard times. She'd brought her 2 best mares, hoping they'd fetch enough to buy time with the bank. Whitman horses had once been sought after from Texas to California. Now they were just another failing asset in a dying valley. Mrs. Whitman, the voice slithered through the crowd like oil on water. Raymond Blackburn stood near the auctioneer's platform, his city suit too clean for honest dirt. Railroad money had a way of keeping a man pressed and polished even in hell's own furnace. "I was hoping you'd grace us with your presence." His smile never reached his eyes. Nora kept her face still as stone. "Mr. Blackburn, now, no need for such formality." He gestured at her mares. "Fine animals. Shame to part with them. Though I suppose they're just the first of many sacrifices, what with that mortgage coming due." Ice formed in Nora's chest despite the heat. "I've got 14 days yet." 14 days. He rolled the words around like hard candy. "And what miracle you planning to work in 14 days? That drought's got your water down to a trickle. Can't raise horses without water." Behind Blackburn, she noticed his employer, for the first time Maxwell Sterling, owner of Sterling Mining Company and half the bank notes in the territory. He was conversing with the mayor, a glass of amber liquid in his manicured hand. Occasionally his gaze drifted toward Nora with the calculating look of a predator assessing wounded prey. "I'll manage," Nora said. "Of course you will." Blackburn pulled out a leather portfolio thick with papers. "Or you could be practical. Mr. Sterling is prepared to make a generous offer. Cash money tonight. Enough to start fresh somewhere else. Maybe California. I hear widows do well in San Francisco." The implication hung in the air like smoke. Nora's hand wanted to curl into a fist, but she kept it loose. Her daddy hadn't raised her to show weakness to wolves. "My land isn't for sale." "Everything's for sale, Mrs. Whitman. Just a matter of price." He tucked the portfolio away. "You think on it. The offer stands till the auction's end." A commotion near the horse pens drew their attention. Someone had brought in a string of mustangs, wild-caught and fighting mad. The horses screamed and kicked, sending up clouds of dust that glowed gold in the lantern light. Through that golden haze walked a man Nora didn't recognize. Tall and lean, with a kind of easy movement that spoke of years in the saddle. His face was sun-dark features, sharp as chipped obsidian, his heritage evident in the high cheekbones and jet-black hair tied back with a simple cord. He led a paint mare gentle as a lamb, talking low in a language that wasn't quite English, wasn't quite anything she knew. The mare followed him like she was made of sweet oats, while the mustangs in the pen tried to kick down the rails. "Who's that?" she asked before she could stop herself. Blackburn spat tobacco juice at the man's boots as he passed. "Some half-breed drifter calls himself Logan Two Hawks. Navajo and Scots, if you can imagine. Does horse work for whoever's paying." His eyes narrowed. "Wouldn't trust him near your stock, ma'am. Them types got ways of making horses disappear." The accusation was ugly as Blackburn's smile. Nora watched the stranger Two Hawks settle his mare with touches light as butterfly wings. There was respect in how he handled her. Not the breaking she'd seen too many men call training. Their eyes met briefly across the auction ground. Something passed between them, recognition, though they'd never met. Then young Billy Thompson, the minister's son, was tugging at her skirt. "Mrs. Whitman, you got to come quick. Something's wrong at your place." Ice formed in her chest despite the heat. "What kind of wrong?" "The well, ma'am. Pa was riding fence and said your wells run dry, nothing but mud at the bottom." The world tilted. That well had been dug by her grandfather's father, 60 feet down to sweet water that never failed. Even in the worst droughts, it ran clear. "That's impossible." But even as she said it, she was moving, pushing through the crowd toward her horse. She'd made it halfway when Blackburn stepped into her path. "Leaving so soon? Auction's just starting to get interesting. Move! The word came out sharper than she intended. That's unfriendly. He didn't budge, tobacco-stained grin spreading. Mr. Sterling was hoping you'd stay. Maybe reconsider his offer. I said move. Or what? He leaned in close enough she could smell the sourness of his breath. You going to make me little widow woman? A hand fell on Blackburn's shoulder. Not hard just there. The stranger, Two Hawks, stood behind him with the same easy calm he'd shown with the mare. Lady said move. Blackburn spun, hand dropping to his gun. This ain't your business, breed. No. Two Hawks' voice was soft as distant thunder. But I'm making it my business. The crowd had gone quiet. That particular silence that preceded violence in frontier towns. Nora could see the calculation in Blackburn's eyes, the weighing of pride against odds. The measuring of this stranger who'd appeared like smoke. From across the auction ground, Sterling's voice cut through the tension. Raymond, a moment, if you please. Blackburn's jaw worked. This ain't over, he said, finally stepping aside. Never is, Two Hawks agreed. Nora didn't wait for more. She mounted quick and set heels to her horse's flanks. The 3-mile ride to her ranch stretched like 30 each hoofbeat, counting down to disaster. The smell hit her before she saw it. The swamp stink of dying water. The well's stonework looked the same, but when she dropped the bucket, it hit mud after only 20 feet. She hauled it up, stared at the sludge that should have been crystal clear. Ain't natural. She spun to find Two Hawks behind her, his paint mare ground-tied in the yard. He'd followed her. She should be angry about that, but the shock of the well had driven out everything else. How long? He asked. It was fine 3 days ago. I drew water at dawn, same as always. He knelt by the well's edge, ran fingers along the stone. Then he was up and walking not toward the house, but out into the scrub, moving in widening circles like a hound on scent. She followed, not sure why. A quarter-mile upstream, though there had been no stream for years, he stopped. The ground was different here, or disturbed. Fresh-turned earth, trying to look old. Sagebrush, replanted, hasty. Someone's been digging, she said. He nodded, kicked at a clump of dirt. It crumbled to show timber underneath. New timber. They cleared more, working in the failing light until the shape became clear. A dam, small but solid, built across the old stream bed that fed the underground water. Divert the flow upstream, your well goes dry, Two Hawks said. Seen it done in range wars, effective as bullets, and harder to prove. Rage replaced shock, hot and clean. Sterling, he wants my land. Offered to buy it tonight. Got another buyer for your land. The railroad. They need water for the new spur line. Her laugh was bitter as alkali. My land's got the best well in 50 miles. She paused. Or had. Two Hawks stood dusting his hands. You got 14 days till the bank takes it. 13 now. Bank holds the paper. And Sterling's got reach there, too. She laughed, bitter as alkali. Law won't help. Sheriff Wilson's in Sterling's pocket, deep as lint. Full dark had fallen. Back at the auction, fiddle music scratched at the sky, people dancing and dealing, while her world crumbled like that turned earth. Why'd you follow me? She asked. He was quiet long enough she thought he wouldn't answer. That man shouldn't corner a woman like that. Ain't right. You don't know me. No, ma'am. But I know Blackburn's type. And Sterling worked for men like them back when I didn't know better. He looked at her straight on. I'm between jobs. You need someone to help guard your stock. She studied him in the darkness. Trust came hard these days, especially for a woman alone. But there was something in how he'd stepped up to Blackburn, quiet-like, without swagger or show. Can't pay much, biscuits and beans, maybe $1 a week if we sell those mares. That'll do. They walked back toward the house, the paint mare following patient as a dog. At the well, Nora pulled up one more bucket of mud, just to be sure she hadn't dreamed it. "We'll need to haul water from Promise Creek," she said. "That's 8 miles round trip." "I know where to find it closer. Old ways from before Wells." She looked at him sharp. "You're Indian, part Navajo, part Scots, part trouble, according to most folks." His smile was crooked in the darkness. "That a problem?" She thought of her husband dead of fever while the town doctor tended to proper folks first. Thought of all the proper people who'd looked through her like glass since she'd been widowed. "No," she said finally. "It's not a problem." Back at the house, she showed him the small room off the barn where ranch hands bunked. The narrow bed and washstand were dusty but serviceable. "Thank you," he said, setting down his saddlebags. "Don't thank me yet. Sterling won't take kindly to interference. Neither will Blackburn." Figured as much. She left him to settle and walked back to her empty house. The silence pressed against her ears. On the mantel, her husband's photograph watched with eyes that couldn't help anymore. Beside it, the tintype of her father, who'd warned her about men like Sterling long before she understood what he meant. 13 days. She had 13 days to find water, save her horses, and stop a mining magnate who owned half the county. Outside, a coyote howled at stars that didn't care. The sound was lonely, as a widow's bed, wild as the land that was slipping through her fingers like sand. But for the first time in months, she wasn't facing it alone. That stranger, Logan Two Hawks, was an unknown card in a marked deck. Maybe it would matter. Maybe it wouldn't. But it was something. She banked the fire, said her prayers to a god who seemed to have gone as dry as her well, and tried not to think about how a man's voice could be soft as thunder, or how hands that gentled horses might feel against her skin. The wind picked up, rattling the windows like bones. Out in the darkness, someone had dammed her water and thought she'd fold like a bad hand. They thought wrong. Dawn came like a brass band, all harsh light and no mercy. Nora found Logan already at work, mending a gap in the corral fence where the winter winds had worried the posts loose. He worked quiet, each movement deliberate as a prayer. "Coffee's on," she called. He nodded, drove one last nail home. The kitchen felt smaller with him in it, his presence filling corners that had been empty too long. She poured coffee black as Midnight noticed how he wrapped both hands around the tin cup like it was something precious. "About that water you mentioned," she started. "After we check your stock," he said. "Horses come first." They walked to the pasture where her breeding mares gathered under the cottonwoods. The trees were dying leaves curled brown as old leather. The horses looked better than she'd feared, but their ribs showed more than they should. "How many you got left?" Logan asked, running expert hands down a chestnut mare's leg. 14. 6 breeding mares, 4 yearlings, 2 geldings for working, and 2 foals. She swallowed hard. Had 30 head before the drought. Had to sell most. These are the best bloodlines, Matthew's pride. He nodded, understanding the weight of what wasn't said. The pregnant bay, she's looking peaked. When she due? 2 months, give or take. She'll need extra feed if she's going to carry to term. Nora's chest tightened. She couldn't afford to lose that foal. The bloodline was irreplaceable, worth more than the whole ranch if it survived. They spent the morning checking each horse, Logan moving with a quiet competence that spoke of years working with animals. By noon, he'd identified the most vulnerable and made a plan for rotating grazing to the least damaged pastures. "Now," he said as they headed back to the house for a noon meal, "about that water." He led her to the barn, where he'd already packed canteens and a shovel onto his paint mare. "There's a canyon about 3 miles north," he explained. "Not much to look at from the trail most folks use, but if you know where to go." They rode out under the punishing sun, Logan leading them off the main trail and into broken country. Rocks jutted like the spines of ancient beasts. Ocotillo spread crimson fingers against the sky, and thorns grabbed at their clothes. It was the kind of land most settlers avoided, too rough for cattle, too dry for crops. Just when Nora was beginning to think they were lost, Logan dismounted and motioned for her to do the same. "Watch your step," he warned, leading her through a narrow crevice in the rock face. The passage twisted through darkness, opening suddenly into a small grotto, barely 20 feet across. In its center, a pool of water glistened in a shaft of sunlight from above. "Sweet Jesus," Nora breathed. "How did you know this was here?" Logan knelt by the water, dipping his fingers reverently. "My grandmother showed me. She was full Navajo. Said water always knows where to hide from greedy men." Nora joined him, cupping her hands to drink. The water was cool and sweet, with none of the alkali tang common to desert springs. "There are others like this," Logan said. "The old people mapped them in their minds, shared the knowledge only with those who respected water's power. And you're showing me." His eyes met hers, dark and unreadable. "You need it more than the secrets need keeping." They filled their canteens and the extra water bags Logan had brought. It wouldn't be enough for all the horses, but it would keep the weakest alive until they figured out a better solution. As they exited the hidden canyon, a shadow passed overhead. Nora looked up to see an eagle circling against the endless blue. "Good sign," Logan said, following her gaze. "Eagle medicine is strong. Sees far." She wasn't sure she believed in such things, but the bird's appearance after finding water did feel like more than coincidence. First the water at Matthew's grave, now this. As if the land itself was trying to help her. Or perhaps she was just desperate for signs of hope. That evening, after settling the horses with their precious water ration, Nora led Logan to the root cellar beneath the house. The space was cool and dark shelves half empty of preserves after the lean winter. "There's something I need to show you," she said, lighting a lantern. In the far corner behind stacked potato crates, she revealed a trap door set into the packed earth floor. It took both of them to lift it, revealing a narrow set of stairs descending into darkness. "My grandfather built this place during the Apache raids," she explained, leading the way down. "Said a man needed somewhere to think without being disturbed." The room below was small but solid-walled with timber and shelved with books. A desk dominated one wall, covered with maps and papers yellowed with age. Dust lay thick on everything. "My father spent hours down here," Nora said, running fingers over the desk's surface. "After he died, Matthew and I never had much use for it." Logan moved carefully through the space, examining the maps pinned to the walls. They showed Promise Valley and the surrounding mountains in exquisite detail with markings in a flowing script he didn't recognize. "These aren't ordinary survey maps," he said. "No." Nora pulled a leather-bound journal from a drawer. "My father was obsessed with water. Said understanding it was the key to surviving out here." She opened the journal, revealing pages of diagrams, calculations, and handwritten notes. Some were in English, others in a language that used symbols instead of letters. "I never could make sense of half of it," she admitted. "But look at this." She turned to a page showing what appeared to be a cross-section of the valley. Blue lines ran beneath the surface, converging in several places, marked with strange symbols. Logan's breath caught. He traced one symbol with his finger, a spiral within a square. This is Navajo. It means living water. He pointed to another, a lightning bolt inside a circle. And this means Sky Father's gift. You can read this. Some. My grandmother taught me the old writing. He studied the map more closely. These markings show underground water paths. See how they connect. Your father understood something most settlers never learn. Water doesn't just sit still underground. It moves, has patterns like the stars. Nora watched his face, fascination replacing her initial wariness. Can you read the rest? Logan flipped through more pages, brow furrowed in concentration. Much of this is technical depth measurements, flow calculations. But these notes in the margins... He tapped a passage written in the strange symbols. This is a warning. It says, silver beneath the water brings death to the careless. Silver. Nora leaned closer. There's no silver in Promise Valley. Copper in the mountains, some gold in the stream beds, but never silver. Your father thought differently. Logan turned another page, revealing a crude sketch of what appeared to be a mine shaft. And it seems someone else knows it too. The implication struck Nora like a physical blow. Sterling, he's not after my land for water or the railroad. He's after what's underneath it. Appears so. And he's willing to steal your water to force you out without revealing the real prize. Nora sat heavily on the old chair dust, puffing around her. My father never mentioned silver. Why keep it secret, even from family? Perhaps because of this. Logan pointed to another notation, this one accompanied by a small drawing of skeletons. It says, 16 souls paid the price for white man's greed. The mine is cursed. A cave-in, Nora whispered. Or something worse. Logan continued reading. The water and silver run together in the sacred place. To take one is to poison the other. Outside, the wind picked up, moaning around the corners of the house. It felt suddenly colder in the underground room, as if the past itself was breathing down their necks. We need to find this mine, Nora said, standing with renewed determination. If there's silver under my land, that changes everything. The bank can't foreclose on a valuable claim. Not that simple, Logan warned. If Sterling knows about the silver, he's got plans beyond simple foreclosure. Men have died for less. Then we'd better not die, Nora said, gathering the journal and the most detailed maps. We need proof, and we need allies. As they climbed back to the root cellar, Nora's foot slipped on the narrow stairs. Logan caught her with quick reflexes, his hand steady at her elbow. For a moment, they stood close, his breath warm on her cheek. Thank you, she said, suddenly aware of how long it had been since she'd been touched with anything resembling tenderness. He nodded, releasing her carefully. Careful on these steps. Would be a shame to find a silver mine just to break your neck before claiming it. Despite everything, she found herself smiling. There was something about his quiet competence that made even disaster seem manageable. Back in the kitchen, they spread the maps on the table, studying them by lamplight. According to her father's notes, the silver deposit lay beneath a formation called the Three Sisters, a trio of stone pillars that rose from the valley floor about a mile from the ranch house. We'll go at first light, Nora decided. See if there's any sign of the old mine shaft. Logan nodded, but his eyes were troubled. If your father sealed it up, there was good reason. I'm not looking to reopen it, she assured him. Just to prove it exists. That's all I need to stop Sterling. But as she lay in bed that night staring at the ceiling, Nora couldn't shake the unease that had settled in her bones. 16 souls paid the price. A cursed mine. Her father's secrecy. and now Sterling damming her water, circling like a vulture. She pressed her hand to her belly, felt the slight swell that only she knew was there. "I'll keep you safe," she whispered to her unborn child. "Whatever it takes." Outside, the coyotes sang to the moon, their voices rising and falling in ancient harmony. For the first time, Nora tried to hear what Logan might hear in their calls, not mindless howling, but stories passed down through generations. Warnings, perhaps, or promises. Sleep came eventually, bringing dreams of underground rivers flowing with liquid silver, and an eagle soaring overhead, its shadow falling across her face like a blessing. The three sisters rose from the valley floor, like sentinels, their weathered surfaces catching the early morning light in shades of amber and gold. Nora and Logan approached cautiously, aware they might be watched. "There," Logan pointed to the base of the middle pillar. "See how the rock is different, darker." Nora squinted against the sun. Indeed, there was a section about 6 feet high where the stone didn't match the rest. "Looks like it was filled in." They dismounted, approaching on foot. Logan ran his hands over the darker stone, feeling for edges. This was a tunnel entrance, sealed with concrete and native rock to disguise it. "My father's work, or whoever came before him." Logan knelt, examining the ground. "There are traces of an old trail here coming from the direction of your ranch. See how the earth is compacted differently." Nora saw only dirt and scrub, but nodded anyway. Logan's ability to read the land was uncanny. He stood scanning the surrounding terrain. "Your father's maps show another entrance, don't they, from inside the northern ridge?" "Yes, but it's not marked clearly. Just a dotted line from what looks like a cave." "There's good reason for that." Logan pointed to a barely visible path winding up the ridge. "That's Navajo country up there. Sacred ground. The old ones would have kept those passages secret, used them for ceremonies and refuge. And my father knew about them." That seemed unlikely for a white settler. "Someone taught him." Logan's expression was unreadable. "Someone who trusted him enough to share the old knowledge." They spent the morning searching the area, finding more evidence of mining activity, old tools half buried in the sand timber fragments, even a rusted ore cart partially hidden in a wash. Whatever operation had existed here, it had been substantial. By noon, the heat had become oppressive. They retreated to the shade of an overhanging rock, sharing water, and the bread and cheese Nora had packed. "Why would my father keep this secret?" she wondered aloud. "A silver mine could have made us rich." Not if the cost was too high. Logan gazed at the three sisters, something ancient in his eyes. "The old stories say this valley was sacred to the first people, that the water here has special power because it flows over the bones of the ancestors. And the silver belongs to the earth. To take it without proper ceremony is to invite misfortune." He paused. "Your father's journal mentioned 16 souls. Maybe he learned that lesson the hard way." Nora considered this. Her father had always been a practical man, not given to superstition, but he'd also respected the land in ways many settlers didn't, teaching her to take only what was needed and to give thanks for it. "We need to find out what happened here," she decided. "Not just for the claim, but to understand what we're facing." Logan nodded. "The answers might be in those tunnels, but we'd need equipment light rope. It's not safe to explore unprepared. Then we go back to the ranch, gather what we need." Nora stood brushing dust from her skirts. "And maybe check those Navajo symbols again. If my father was working with someone from your people, there might be clues about safer ways in." As they mounted their horses, a distant glint of metal caught Nora's eye. She raised her hand to shield against the sun, peering toward the ridge to the east. "Someone's watching us," she said quietly. Logan didn't turn to look. "I know. Been there since we arrived." Rifle scope, probably. Nora's blood ran cold. Sterling's men, most likely. We should ride casual like we found nothing of interest. Just a widow and her hired hand checking fence lines. They did exactly that, taking a roundabout path back to the ranch, stopping occasionally as if inspecting the sparse grazing land. Only when the house came into view did Nora release the breath she'd been holding. Will they follow us here? They might. Logan's eyes scanned the approaches to the ranch. But they won't find what they're looking for, not yet. Inside, they secured the doors and windows before returning to the maps and journal. This time, Logan focused on the Navajo symbols, tracing their patterns with a patient finger. There's a sequence here, he said finally. A story told in symbols about how the water and silver came to rest together. Can you read it? Parts of it? He pointed to a series of markings along one of the blue water lines. This tells of a time when the Sky Father's tears rain fell for many days without stopping. The Earth Mother grew heavy with water, and in her pain she brought forth the shining metal as a gift to her children. A flood story, of sorts, but it's also a warning. The silver and water are tied together. One protects the other. If you take the silver without proper respect, the water will vanish. If you divert the water wrongfully, the silver turns to poison. Nora felt a chill despite the afternoon heat. Is that what happened to the 16 who died? Perhaps. Logan turned the page, revealing a detailed drawing of what appeared to be a cave system. But there's more here. Look at this marking the spiral inside the square. It appears 3 times always near the deepest water source. What does it mean? The living water, as I said before. But it's also the symbol for a sacred spring, one that never fails even in the worst drought. Nora leaned forward, hope flaring in her chest. You think there's a spring like that on my land? Not just any spring. Logan's finger traced the path of the underground water as it flowed beneath the Whitman Ranch. According to this, there's a source deeper than your well ever reached. Ancient water from before the first people came to this valley. How deep? 100 feet, maybe more. Nora sat back, calculations running through her mind. Digging a new well that deep would be expensive and time-consuming, more than she could manage in 13 days with no money. There has to be another way, she said. Logan studied the map a moment longer, then looked up with newfound intensity in his dark eyes. There is. The tunnel system your father mapped, it doesn't just lead to silver. It connects to the deep water source as well. So, if we can find an entrance to the tunnels, we find both the silver and the water. He nodded. But we need help. This isn't work for 2 people alone. Nora bit her lip, considering their options. Trust was a scarce commodity in Promise Valley, especially for a widow with nothing to offer but future favors. I might know someone, she said finally. Martha Running Bear. She runs the trading post out by the reservation boundary. If anyone would know about the old Navajo passages, it would be her. Logan's expression shifted subtly. Martha Running Bear. You know her. A complicated emotion crossed his face, recognition, respect, and something like apprehension. She's my grandmother. Nora stared. Your grandmother? But you said you were just passing through, that you'd worked for men like Sterling. Both true. His jaw tightened. I've been gone a long time. Left the old ways, tried to live in the white man's world. Did things I'm not proud of. And now, you're back. Not by choice at first. He looked away. Was heading to California looking for work. Stopped to see her before moving on. Does she know you're here, working for me? No. The word came heavy with unspoken history. We didn't part on good terms last time. Nora sensed there was much more to the story, but now wasn't the time to press. Will she help us? Not for my sake. Logan's smile was tinged with old pain. But for the water and the truth, maybe. They agreed to ride out to the trading post the next morning. As Logan left to check on the horses one last time before dark, Nora found herself watching him with new eyes. Not just a drifter, not just a hired hand. A man with his own complicated history, his own wounds and regrets. And now, whether either of them had intended it, their stories were intertwining like the silver and water beneath her land, each affecting the other in ways she couldn't yet foresee. That night she dreamed of Matthew again. Not as he'd been in death-wasted and fever-burned, but strong and whole, standing by the three sisters. In the dream he pointed to the rock face and water began to flow from it, carrying gleaming strands of silver like liquid moonlight. It was always for you, dream, Matthew told her. For our child. For the future. She woke with tears on her cheeks, and the absolute certainty that she was on the right path, however dangerous it might prove. 12 days remained until the bank foreclosed. 12 days to uncover the truth about her land, her father's secrets, and the silver that might save or destroy everything she loved. The ride to Martha Running Bear's trading post took them through the most desolate stretches of Promise Valley. What had once been fertile grazing land now resembled a barren moonscape, cracked earth, skeletal remains of cattle too weak to reach water, abandoned homesteads with doors banging in the relentless wind. Nora rode slightly behind Logan, watching the set of his shoulders grow more rigid with each mile. Whatever history lay between him and his grandmother, it weighed on him like a physical burden. "How long since you've seen her?" she asked when they stopped to rest the horses in the thin shade of a mesquite. 7 years. His voice was flat. Left when I was 23. Joined the army as a scout. Figured I'd be more useful tracking Apache than sitting around a trading post listening to old stories. There was more to it than that, Nora sensed. What changed? Logan's gaze fixed on the distant horizon. Saw things. Did things. Army wanted scouts who could find water. Find trails. His jaw tightened. Find people who didn't want to be found. Understanding dawned. They used you to track your own people. Not just Navajo, Apache, Yavapai, anyone who wouldn't stay where the government put them. He pulled his hat lower against the sun. Told myself I was helping better a tracker who warned people to hide than one who led soldiers straight to camps. But it wasn't enough. No. A muscle worked in his cheek. Final straw came at White Rock Canyon. Cavalry captain ordered us to find a band that had left the reservation. Said they were renegades, dangerous. We tracked them to a hidden valley. Just women, children, elders. No warriors. No weapons. Nora's throat tightened. What happened? I refused the order. Said there were no hostiles, just hungry people gathering piñon nuts. His hands tightened on the reins. Captain didn't care. Said if I wouldn't lead them in, they'd burn the whole valley. So I warned the band. Got them out before the soldiers arrived. They discharged you. After a month in the stockade. His smile was grim. Would have been worse, but some of the other scouts testified the captain was lying about hostiles. Still, Army has no use for a scout who won't follow orders. So you've been drifting since? He nodded. Worked ranches mostly. Breaking horses, tracking strays. Jobs where being part Indian is useful, but not too visible. Nora studied his profile against the harsh landscape. A man caught between worlds belonging fully to neither. And your grandmother, does she know what happened? Wrote to her once after I was discharged. Never got an answer. He adjusted his hat. Let's keep moving. Still 4 miles to go. They rode in silence after that, each lost in private thoughts. Nora's mind kept returning to her father's journal. The 16 souls lost the warnings about silver and water. There were connections here she couldn't yet see, threads weaving together past and present into a pattern just beyond her understanding. The trading post stood at the crossroads where the old military trail met the path to the Navajo reservation. It was a low adobe building with a wooden porch surrounded by several smaller structures, a stable, a storehouse, what appeared to be living quarters. A hand-painted sign over the door read simply, Trading Post, M. Running Bear Prop. 2 old men sat on the porch playing a game with stones and sticks, while a young Navajo woman swept the packed earth of the yard. She looked up as they approached, her eyes widening at the sight of Logan. "Ya ate," she called, then added something in Navajo that made Logan straighten in his saddle. "Ya ate ki," he replied. "Grandmother." The woman pointed toward the back of the main building. Logan dismounted, handed his reins to Nora, and strode toward the indicated direction with purpose in his step. Nora remained on her horse, suddenly uncertain. This reunion wasn't her business yet. She'd insisted on coming. The young woman Key approached with an appraising look. "You are the widow Whitman," she said, not a question. "Yes." Nora slid from her saddle. "How did you know? Grandmother sees things." "Said you would come." Key took the horse's reins. "Water trough is low, but there's enough. Come inside when you're ready. They will talk for a while first." With that cryptic statement, she led the horses toward the stable, leaving Nora to wonder just how much Martha Running Bear knew about her arrival or her situation. The interior of the trading post was cool and dimly lit, a welcome respite from the glare outside. Shelves lined the walls, stocked with goods, both practical and exotic sacks of flour and coffee beans, alongside intricate silver jewelry and woven blankets in geometric patterns. The air smelled of leather tobacco and some unidentifiable herb that reminded Nora of sage, but sweeter. An elderly white man with a magnificent beard was carefully arranging canned goods behind a rough-hewn counter. "Afternoon," he nodded to Nora. "Samuel Chen at your service. Martha's expecting you out back." "Chen!" Nora couldn't hide her surprise at the distinctly non-Chinese name coming from a very Chinese face. The old man chuckled. "Long story. Short version, war between the state's railroad work immigration office that couldn't spell my real name. Been Samuel Chen for 30 years now." He gestured toward a door at the rear. "Through there past the storeroom. They're in the medicine lodge." Nora thanked him and made her way through the dimly lit storeroom, emerging into a small courtyard. Across it stood a circular structure made of timber and clay, with smoke rising from a hole in its domed roof. She hesitated at the entrance, a hide-covered doorway painted with symbols similar to those in her father's journal. Before she could decide whether to enter, the covering was pushed aside from within. Martha Running Bear stood framed in the doorway, her small figure straight as a lodgepole pine despite her advanced age. Deep lines etched her copper face, and her silver hair was pulled back in a single thick braid. But it was her eyes that commanded attention, black as obsidian, and just as sharp, missing nothing. "Eleanor Whitman," she said, her voice surprisingly melodious. "Daughter of Joseph, wife of Matthew. I have been waiting for you." Nora swallowed. "Mrs. Running Bear, thank you for seeing us." "Martha," the old woman corrected. "We do not stand on ceremony here." She stepped aside, gesturing for Nora to enter. "Come, my grandson has told me of your troubles. We have much to discuss." Inside the circular room was lit by a small fire in a central pit. Logan sat cross-legged on a woven mat, his expression unreadable. The walls were hung with strange objects, feathered sticks, bundles of herbs, animal skins stretched on wooden frames. The smoke from the fire carried that same sweet sage smell Nora had noticed in the trading post. "Sit," Martha indicated a place opposite Logan. "Rest your bones and your spirit." Nora settled awkwardly onto the mat, unused to sitting on the ground. Martha moved with the fluid grace of someone half her age, arranging herself between them to complete the circle around the fire. "So," she said without preamble, "Sterling has finally made his move." Nora blinked in surprise. "You know about Sterling?" "I know many things about Maxwell Sterling." Martha's mouth thinned. "I know he was your father's partner in the silver mine. I know he caused the cave-in that killed 16 miners, 12 of them my people. And I know he has waited 20 years to try again, thinking the old ones who remember have died or forgotten." "But how do you know all this?" Martha exchanged a glance with Logan. "I was married to one of those miners, Logan's grandfather. I was there the day they brought the bodies out." The weight of history settled over the small room. Nora looked from grandmother to grandson, seeing now the shared grief that connected them across the years. "My father never told me," she said quietly, "about the mine, the partnership with Sterling, any of it." "Joseph Whitman was a complicated man," Martha said. "He came west to make his fortune like so many others. But he learned to respect the land and its guardians. When the disaster happened, he sealed the mine, paid blood money to the families, and swore never to touch the silver again. And Sterling disappeared before the bodies were cold. Came back years later with money from back east, started the bank, bought the mining interests on the North Ridge. Respectable businessman now." Martha spat into the fire. "But those with eyes to see know what he truly is." Nora thought of the mortgage paper in Sterling's hands, the dam diverting her water, the circling vultures waiting for her land. "He wants the silver. That's why he's forcing me out instead of just buying the ranch." "The silver, yes, but not only that." Martha leaned forward, her eyes reflecting the firelight. "He wants what lies beneath the silver. The sacred water. The deep spring." Nora recalled the markings on her father's map. "The living water." Martha's eyebrows rose slightly. "You know of this from my father's journals." Logan helped translate some of the symbols. The old woman's gaze shifted to her grandson, a flicker of approval crossing her features. "So you remembered some of your teachings after all?" Logan didn't respond, but his shoulders relaxed fractionally. Martha turned back to Nora. "The water beneath your land is special. Our people call it the mother's tears. It comes from deeper than any well can reach, pure and endless. In the old days, even during the worst droughts, there was a place where it touched the surface, a sacred spring, where all were welcome to drink." "What happened to it?" "The silver happened." Martha's voice hardened. "When men began to dig for the shining metal, they changed the path of the underground river. The spring retreated deeper, hiding from greedy hands." "But it's still there, this endless water." "Yes, waiting for the right time, the right hands to find it again." Martha studied Nora intently. "Your father understood this. That is why he made certain arrangements before he died." "What arrangements?" Instead of answering directly, Martha reached into a pouch at her waist and withdrew a small object. She placed it on the ground between them, a silver pendant shaped like a spiral inside a square identical to the symbol in Joseph Whitman's journal. "This belonged to your father," Martha said. "He asked me to keep it safe until it was needed." Nora stared at the pendant, memories stirring. She'd seen her father wear it occasionally, though he'd never explained its significance. Why would he give it to you? Because Joseph Whitman and I shared more than grief over the mine disaster. Martha's gaze was steady. We shared blood through you. The words hung in the smoke-filled air. Nora felt as if the ground had shifted beneath her. What are you saying? Your mother died when you were very young. Yes, when I was 3. I barely remember her. And your father never remarried, though many widowers would have. Instead, he brought you here to this trading post whenever he needed to travel for business. Martha's eyes softened with memory. You would play with the Navajo children, while he and I spoke of many things. I remember coming here, Nora said slowly. But I don't understand what you're saying. Your mother, Eleanor, was my niece. Half white, half Navajo, raised in the white world after her mother, my sister, died. Martha touched the pendant gently. Joseph didn't know when he married her, only discovered the truth after her death when he found letters from her mother. Nora felt dizzy. I'm part Navajo. A small part, yes. Your grandmother was full Navajo, making your mother half, and you 1/4. Martha smiled slightly. It is enough. The blood remembers even when the mind forgets. Logan was watching Nora, carefully gauging her reaction. This changes things, he said quietly. How? Nora's voice came out sharper than intended. I'm still the same person I was this morning. You are, Martha agreed. But now you understand why Sterling's pursuit of your land is about more than business. The sacred water belongs to those with Navajo blood. Your father knew this. It is why he protected the land so fiercely, why he kept the silver secret. And why the water appeared at Matthew's grave, Logan added. The land recognized you as its rightful guardian. Nora's hand went unconsciously to her belly. 1/4 Navajo, and her child, Matthew's child, would carry that heritage as well diluted but present. A connection to this land deeper than paper deeds or legal claims. What do I do now? She asked finally. Sterling has dammed my water. The bank will take my land in 12 days. Knowing about silver and sacred springs doesn't change that. No, Martha agreed. But knowledge is the beginning of power. She picked up the pendant and pressed it into Nora's palm. Wear this. It marks you as a friend of the people and a guardian of the water. There's more, Logan said, meeting his grandmother's eyes. Tell her the rest. Martha sighed suddenly, looking every one of her many years. The silver mine is cursed. Not in the way white people think of curses with ghosts and hauntings. But cursed in truth, the silver contains traces of something that poisons water, poisons the earth. This is why so many died in the cave-in. Not from falling rocks, but from bad air that came when they breached a certain level. Arsenic, Nora breathed, remembering her father's chemistry books. Silver often contains arsenic compounds. Whatever its name, it brings death, Martha said. Your father understood this, sealed the mine not just to honor the dead, but to protect the living. And if Sterling reopens it, he will poison the deep water. Not just your well, but all the water in the valley. Springs, streams, everything. The death will spread for miles. The enormity of it settled on Nora's shoulders. Not just her ranch at stake, but the entire valley. Every farm, every family, every herd of cattle and flock of sheep. We have to stop him, she said. Yes. Martha's eyes glittered in the firelight. But not alone. You will need allies. I have Logan. Nora glanced at him, surprising herself with how naturally she included him. And now you. You will need more. Martha rose with that same fluid grace. Stay the night. Tomorrow we begin to gather those who will stand with you. They shared a simple meal that evening, rabbit stew, flatbread, and dried berries in Martha's private quarters behind the trading post. Key joined them along with Samuel Chen and a white woman in her 50s, whom Martha introduced as Rose McAllister, the widowed owner of Promise Valley's only proper boarding house. Rose knows Sterling better than most, Martha explained as they ate. Her husband was one of his early investors. Rose's mouth twisted bitterly. Frank put everything we had into Sterling Mining Company. 2 weeks later, he was dead of heart failure, and Sterling owned controlling interest in the company. She took a long sip of her coffee. No proof of foul play, of course. Just a widow left with a boarding house and a heap of debts. That seems to be Sterling's preferred method, Samuel Chen observed. Create debt, then collect assets when people can't pay. He's raised the water rates in town 3 times this year. My store barely breaks, even after paying for what we need to wash laundry and clean the place. Nora listened as they exchanged stories of Sterling's predatory business practices, foreclosed farms mysteriously failing Wells competitors driven out through manipulation of freight rates and supply chains. A pattern emerged of a man systematically gaining control of the valley's resources, particularly water. But why? She asked finally. If the silver mine is his goal, why bother with all this other business? Control, Logan said simply. Man like that doesn't just want wealth. He wants power. Owning all the water in a drought gives him that. And keeps anyone from looking too closely at his mining operations, Rose added. Hard to oppose the man who controls whether your children drink. After the meal, while the others continued talking, Nora stepped outside for air. The night was clear, stars scattered across the black sky like handfuls of diamond dust. She found herself touching the silver pendant now hanging around her neck. Part Navajo. The revelation still felt unreal, yet somewhere deep inside it resonated with a truth she'd always somehow known. She sensed rather than heard Logan approach his steps, nearly silent on the packed earth. It's a lot to take in, he said, coming to stand beside her. Yes, she gazed up at the stars. I keep thinking about my father, all those years keeping these secrets. I thought I knew him. We never fully know anyone. Logan's voice was gentle. Not even ourselves. How did you feel when you first left here, turned your back on your heritage? He was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Free at first, he said finally. Like I'd put down a heavy burden. The white world seemed simpler. Do the job, get paid, move on. No responsibilities to the past, to the land, to the old ways. And then later, empty? Like a gourd with all the seeds scooped out. His profile was sharp against the starlit sky. I'd wake up not knowing where I was, which town, which state even. Nothing connecting one day to the next, except survival. Is that why you came back? Partly. He turned to face her. My grandmother wrote to me 6 months ago. Said she'd dreamed of the silver mine reopening of poison in the water. Said I needed to come home. His mouth quirked. I ignored it, kept drifting. But somehow my jobs kept bringing me closer to Promise Valley. Then I saw you at the auction, heard about your well. You knew who I was. It wasn't a question. Suspected. Wasn't sure until I saw the ranch, the well. He shrugged. Figured I'd help. If I could, then move on. And now I'm not sure moving on is an option. His eyes reflected the starlight. Things are connected in ways I don't fully understand yet. You, me, the mine, the water. like we're being drawn into something that started long before us. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of sage and distant rain, though the sky remained clear. Nora shivered, not entirely from cold. "I'm afraid," she admitted, "not just for myself, but for my baby." Logan's gaze dropped to her midsection. "You're with child," she nodded. "Found out the day after burying Matthew. Haven't told anyone else." He was silent a moment, absorbing this new information. "All the more reason to fight," he said finally. "That child deserves to know its heritage, its connection to this land." "If there's anything left to connect to," Nora said bleakly. 11 days, Logan. How do we stop Sterling in 11 days? One step at a time." He touched the pendant at her throat lightly. "Starting with this. My grandmother doesn't give these lightly. It means she believes you're the one who can restore balance, bring the sacred water back to the surface." "How I don't know the first thing about Navajo ceremonies or—" "It's not about ceremonies." His hand dropped away. "It's about intention. About recognizing that water isn't just a resource to be owned or controlled. It's alive in its way, connected to everything else. The old ones say water listens, remembers, responds to how it's treated." Under different circumstances, Nora might have dismissed such talk as superstition. But after seeing water appear at Matthew's grave, after learning about her own mixed heritage, she found herself open to possibilities beyond her usual understanding. "Teach me," she said simply. His eyes widened slightly, then softened. "I will, what I remember anyway." They stood in companionable silence for a while, watching the stars wheel overhead. Despite everything, the looming foreclosure, Sterling's machinations, the revelations about her heritage, Nora felt more at peace than she had since Matthew's death, as if putting names to the threats had somehow made them more manageable. "We should get some rest," Logan said eventually. "Tomorrow will bring its own challenges." She nodded, but neither of them moved immediately. In the quiet darkness, with the distant coyotes singing to the moon, Nora was acutely aware of Logan's presence beside her, solid grounding, unexpectedly comforting. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for following me from the auction, for helping with the well, for bringing me here." "Shinaba," he replied, then translated, "I return the thanks to you for reminding me what I'd forgotten about home." As they turned to go inside, Nora caught movement at the edge of her vision. A large bird, silhouetted against the stars, wings spread wide. The eagle from earlier, still watching over them. Perhaps she thought they weren't as alone in this fight as she'd feared. Morning brought activity to the trading post. Martha had sent runners to various homesteads and to the reservation, spreading word of a gathering to discuss the water situation. By noon, the yard was filled with an unlikely assortment of people: Navajo elders in traditional dress, Mexican vaqueros, white farmers and ranchers, even a few Chinese workers from the railroad camp. "More than I expected," Martha observed with satisfaction as she and Nora watched from the porch. "Sterling has made many enemies." But will they help? Nora wondered. Talk is one thing. Standing against Sterling and his men is another. "We shall see." Martha straightened as a dust cloud appeared on the horizon. "Ah, here comes another ally." The cloud resolved into a single rider on a big bay horse. As he drew closer, Nora recognized Howard Williams, the schoolteacher from Promise Valley. Williams was a rarity in the territory, a black man with formal education who'd come west after the war between the states to start fresh, where his race might matter less than his abilities. He dismounted with the easy grace of a practiced horseman and removed his hat as he approached the porch. "Mrs. Running Bear." He nodded respectfully. "Mrs. Whitman, I came as soon as I got your message." "Thank you for coming, Mr. Williams," Martha said. "Your knowledge will be valuable today." Williams looked uncomfortable. "I'm not sure how much help I can be. Law's not exactly on our side in this situation." "Which is why we need someone who understands it," Martha replied. "Come, the meeting will begin soon." They gathered in the large central room of the trading post where Samuel Chen and Key had cleared space and arranged benches and chairs in a rough circle. Martha took a position near the door, with Logan standing silent behind her right shoulder. Nora sat between Howard Williams and Rose McAllister, acutely aware of the diverse eyes assessing her. Martha opened with a simple statement of facts: Sterling's damming of water on federal land, his pattern of acquiring property through foreclosure, and finally the existence of the silver mine with its potential to poison the valley's water supply. She spoke clearly, without embellishment, letting the gravity of the situation speak for itself. When she finished, an old Navajo man with a deeply lined face spoke up. "This mine, it is the same one that killed our people 20 years ago." "Yes, uncle," Martha replied. "The same." Murmurs spread through the gathering. Many of the older Navajo nodded grimly, while the white settlers exchanged confused glances. "What mine is this?" asked a weather-beaten rancher named Hollister. "Ain't heard of no silver mine in Promise Valley." "It was kept secret," Nora explained, rising to address the group. "My father, Joseph Whitman, and Maxwell Sterling discovered silver under what's now my ranch. They brought in miners, including many Navajo men, to extract it. But something went wrong. 16 men died when they breached a pocket of poisonous gas. Arsenic compounds," Howard Williams clarified, "common in silver deposits. When disturbed, they can release deadly vapors." "My father sealed the mine afterward," Nora continued. "Made Sterling pay compensation to the families. They agreed never to reopen it because of the danger to the water supply." "But now Sterling wants to try again," Rose McAllister added. "He's been buying up water rights all over the valley, raising rates in town, damming streams, all to force people out, so there's no one to oppose him when he reopens the mine." The rancher Hollister looked skeptical. "How do you know that's his plan? Sounds like regular business to me." "Tough business, sure, but not illegal." The dam diverting misses. "Whitman's water is on federal land," Howard Williams pointed out. "That's definitely illegal. And I've examined the old treaties. The Navajo have specific water rights in this region that Sterling's operations violate." "So take him to court," suggested another settler. "Court's 3 days' ride to Prescott," Rose countered. "And Mrs. Whitman's mortgage comes due in 11 days. Sterling owns the bank. Do the math." Tension filled the room as the various factions eyed each other warily. Old grievances and suspicions threatened to overwhelm the common threat. Then Logan spoke, his voice quiet, but carrying to every corner. "This isn't about white or Navajo settler or native. This is about water. Without it, we all die. Our livestock dies, our crops die. Sterling knows this. It's why he's targeting water first. Divide us. Make us fight each other for what little remains while he takes control of the source." "The half-breed speaks truth," the old Navajo man said, using the term without the venom Blackburn had given it. "Water flows for all or none." Martha stepped forward again. "We need to work together. Document the illegal dam. Gather evidence of Sterling's other activities. Present it to the federal marshal in Prescott before Mrs. Whitman's foreclosure." "And if that doesn't work," asked a Mexican vaquero, "what then?" "Then we consider other options," Martha said, her obsidian eyes glittering. "But first we try the white man's law." The discussion continued, gradually shifting from skepticism to tentative planning. Howard Williams offered his legal knowledge, explaining how federal water laws superseded territorial regulations. Samuel Chen volunteered his store as a meeting place in town, where information could be exchanged without drawing attention. The ranchers and farmers initially, the most hesitant, eventually agreed to document any water interference on their properties. By late afternoon, a loose coalition had formed. Not friendship, exactly too many historical wounds for that, but a pragmatic alliance against a common enemy. As the gathering dispersed, Nora found herself approached by the old Navajo man who had spoken earlier. "You wear the water guardian symbol?" he observed, gesturing to her pendant. "Yes, Martha gave it to me. It belonged to your father before you." He studied her face. "I see him in you. Joseph Whitman was a good man for a Bilagayana. He respected the old ways." "You knew him?" The old man nodded. "I helped him seal the mine after the disaster. He understood why it needed to be closed forever." His gaze was piercing. "Do you understand as well?" "I think so," Nora said carefully. "The silver and water are connected. Taking one destroys the other." "Yes, but there is more." He leaned closer. "There is a passage in the old tunnels, a place where the deep water comes close to the surface. The entrance is hidden, but it exists. Your father knew of it. How do I find it?" "The pendant will guide you if you listen." He touched the silver spiral briefly. "Water calls to water." Before Nora could ask more, Martha approached, ending the conversation. The old man nodded respectfully to both women and moved away. "What did Hosteenbigay tell you?" Martha asked. "Something about a hidden passage in the tunnels, a place where the deep water comes close to the surface." Martha's expression sharpened. "Did he say where—" "No, just that the pendant would guide me somehow." Nora touched the silver spiral. "Does that make any sense to you?" "Perhaps." Martha looked thoughtful. "The old ones speak in riddles sometimes, but there is usually truth at the core." She surveyed the dispersing crowd. "We've made a start here. Now we must act quickly. But what's our next step?" "You and Logan will return to your ranch, document the illegal dam, gather your father's journals and maps, all of them. I will speak with others who remember the old mine. And then we find this passage Hosteenbigay mentioned." Martha's eyes gleamed with purpose. "If there is a way to access the deep water without disturbing the silver, it could change everything." As they prepared to leave, Rose McAllister pulled Nora aside. "Be careful," she warned. "Sterling has eyes everywhere. After a meeting this size, he'll know something's brewing." "We'll watch our backs," Nora assured her. Rose pressed something into her hand, a small Derringer pistol. "Just in case. It was my husband's. 2 shots, so make them count." Nora hesitated, then tucked the weapon into her pocket. "Thank you." They left the trading post as the sun began its westward descent, Nora and Logan riding side by side across the golden landscape. The pendant felt warm against her skin, a constant reminder of newly discovered connections to the land, to her heritage, to the man beside her. "Do you think it will work?" she asked as the miles passed beneath their horses' hooves. "This alliance, it's fragile," Logan admitted. "Too many old wounds. But fear of Sterling might be stronger than old hatreds, at least for a while." "And the passage Hosteenbigay mentioned, do you know anything about it?" Logan shook his head. "First I've heard of it, but the old ones don't speak idly. If he mentioned it, it exists." They rode in comfortable silence for a time, each processing the day's events. The wind carried the scent of sage and dust, and in the distance, heat mirages shimmered above the baked earth. "There's something I've been wondering," Nora said finally. "At the auction before all this started, What were you doing there, just passing through, as you said? Logan's eyes remained fixed on the horizon. Not exactly. My grandmother wrote that there would be a woman in trouble, a widow with Joseph Whitman's blood. Said I should be at the harvest auction. His mouth quirked. I thought she was just trying to draw me home again. Almost didn't go. But you did. Something kept nagging at me. Couldn't ignore it. He glanced at her. Then I saw Blackburn cornering you, and it was like a picture coming into focus. Suddenly, I knew why I was there. The implications of his words settled over Nora like a warm blanket. Not coincidence. Not random chance. Something larger at work, bringing them together at precisely the right moment. Water calls to water, she murmured, echoing Hostine Begay's words. Logan nodded, understanding immediately. The old ones would say our paths were meant to cross. That we're each carrying part of a story that needs both to be complete. Do you believe that? I didn't, for a long time. His expression softened. Now I'm not so sure. They crested a rise, and the Whitman ranch came into view below them. From this distance, it looked peaceful. Adobe walls, glowing amber in the late afternoon light, cottonwoods casting long shadows across the yard. But as they drew closer, Nora sensed something wrong. The horses in the corral were bunched at one end, agitated. No smoke rose from the chimney, though she'd left a slow fire banked that morning. Something's not right, Logan said, echoing her thoughts. He reined in, scanning the approach to the ranch. Someone's been here. They dismounted at a prudent distance, approaching on foot, with caution. Logan led the way, moving with the silent grace of a predator. At the edge of the yard, he crouched, suddenly examining the ground. Boot prints, he said quietly. 3 men, maybe 4. Heavy, armed, judging by the depth. Sterling's men. Most likely. He pointed to the house. Doors ajar. They've been inside. Nora's heart raced. All her father's journals, the maps. What if they'd been taken or destroyed? We need to check the cellar, she whispered. The hidden room. Logan nodded, but his expression was grim. Be ready for anything. They might still be here. With infinite care, they crossed the yard to the house. Logan entered first, his hand on the knife at his belt. Nora followed, the small derringer clutched in her sweating palm. The interior was a disaster. Furniture overturned, cupboards emptied onto the floor, mattresses slashed. Someone had thoroughly ransacked the place, searching for something with single-minded determination. The cellar, Nora breathed, moving toward the trapdoor in the kitchen floor. It stood open, darkness yawning below. Logan descended first, Nora close behind. The root cellar was in similar disarray, preserves smashed, shelves toppled. But the hidden trapdoor behind the potato crates remained undisturbed. They didn't find it, Nora said with relief. No, Logan's voice was tight, but they left something else. He pointed to the far wall of the cellar. There, daubed in what looked horribly like blood, was a crude drawing, a spiral inside a square, identical to her pendant. Beneath it, 2 words, found you. The blood-daubed symbol glared at them from the cellar wall, a crude mockery of the pendant Nora wore. Not just a warning, but a declaration Sterling knew about her heritage, about Martha Running Bear, about connections that ran deeper than land deeds or water rights. How could they know? Nora whispered, fingers clutching her pendant. Logan examined the wall without touching it. Not just Sterling. Someone who knows the old symbols, the old ways. His jaw tightened. A traitor to the people. The realization settled cold in Nora's stomach. Someone at the gathering, or someone who'd heard about it, had already reported to Sterling. Their fragile alliance had been compromised before it even began. "We need to check the hidden room," she said, forcing practicality through fear. "Make sure the journals are still safe." The trapdoor behind the potato crates opened with a protesting creak. The room below appeared undisturbed, her father's maps and journals still stacked on the desk where they'd left them. "They didn't find it," Logan said, relief evident in his voice. "Or they'd have taken everything." "Small mercies." Nora gathered the materials quickly, stuffing them into a leather satchel. "We can't stay here, they might come back." Logan nodded grimly. "We'll take what we need, then ride out." "Your horses in the corral, are they valuable?" "The breeding stock, yes. Especially the pregnant bay mare." "We'll drive them ahead of us. Less chance Sterling's men can circle back and take them." They worked efficiently, gathering essential supplies, food, ammunition, bedrolls, her father's journals. While Nora packed, Logan checked the outbuildings, returning with a grim expression. "Your ranch hands won't be coming back," he said quietly. "Found signs of a fight in the bunkhouse. Blood on the floor." Nora's throat tightened. Jim and Carlos, good men who'd stayed on despite late wages and uncertain future. "Dead? Can't say for sure. Taken, maybe." He hesitated. "There's something else." Blackburn left his calling card. From his pocket, he withdrew a small object, a steel spur with a distinctive five-pointed rowel. Blackburn's trademark, known throughout the territory. "He wants us to know it was him," Nora said, anger rising through fear. "He's not even bothering to hide it." "Man like that doesn't need to hide. Law's in Sterling's pocket." Logan tucked the spur away. "But it gives us something solid. Evidence." They finished loading the horses as the sun dipped toward the horizon. The pregnant bay mare seemed agitated, rolling her eyes at unfamiliar scents, but followed Nora's gentle coaxing into the string of horses they planned to drive. "Where do we go?" Nora asked as they prepared to leave. "Back to your grandmother's." Logan shook his head. "First place they'll look. We need somewhere unexpected." He thought a moment. "The Three Sisters, the old mine entrance. Isn't that dangerous if Sterling's men are searching for the mine? They'll be looking for new ways in not camping at a sealed entrance." He swung into the saddle. "Plus, Faustine Begay mentioned a passage near there. Might be worth investigating." Nora mounted her own horse, casting one last look at the ranch house. Her home, Matthew's home, now violated and unsafe. The sense of violation burned like bile in her throat. "We'll come back," she promised herself softly. "This isn't over." They rode out as the first stars appeared, driving the small herd of horses before them. The moon rose full and golden, casting long shadows across the desert floor. For once, Nora was grateful for the drought. The hard-packed earth left little trace of their passage, making them harder to track. Logan led them on a circuitous route, doubling back occasionally, fording dry creek beds, using every trick of his scout training to confuse potential pursuers. By the time the Three Sisters came into view, a ghostly trio in the moonlight, Nora was exhausted but grimly determined. There, Logan pointed to a narrow crevice at the base of the rock formation. "Natural cave behind the sealed mine entrance. Should be big enough for us and the horses." The opening was nearly invisible until they were right upon it, a slash in the rock face, partially hidden by scrub brush. Inside, the space opened surprisingly wide with a sandy floor and walls that rose to a natural chimney, letting in both moonlight and fresh air. "Old people used this place," Logan observed, noting the smoke-darkened ceiling. "Temporary shelter during raids or hunting trips." They settled the horses at the rear of the cave, where a small seep provided just enough water for drinking. The animals, tired from the hasty journey, quieted quickly. Nora and Logan made a cold camp, neither willing to risk a fire that might be spotted. As they shared jerky and hardtack in the blue moonlight filtering from above, Nora felt the enormity of their situation pressing down. Homeless pursued with only 11 days before the bank foreclosed, and now apparently targeted not just for her land, but for her heritage as well. Who could have betrayed us? She wondered aloud. Logan's face was grim in the half-light. Could be anyone. Sterling has money power, makes people do things they wouldn't otherwise. But the symbol on the wall, that's specific knowledge, Navajo knowledge. Yes, his voice hardened, which narrows it down, but not enough. Could be someone at the trading post. Could be one of the elders bought or threatened. Nora touched the pendant at her throat. Why is this so important? It's just a symbol. Not just a symbol. Logan moved closer, speaking low, as if the rocks themselves might listen. It marks the guardian of the living water. In the old days, only one person in each generation wore it, the one responsible for protecting the sacred spring. But I'm barely Navajo, just a quarter. Blood quantum doesn't matter to the old ones. What matters is connection to the land, to the water. His eyes reflected moonlight. My grandmother believes you're the one meant to restore the balance, bring the deep water back to the surface, where all can access it. How am I supposed to do that? I don't know the first thing about Navajo ceremonies or beliefs. It's not about ceremonies. Logan's voice softened. It's about listening. The old ones say water is alive. It hears, feels, remembers. It responds to how it's treated. Under different circumstances, Nora might have dismissed such talk. But the water at Matthew's grave, the fierce protection of her land, despite overwhelming odds, something deeper than rational thought was driving her now. So I need to listen to the water. For a start. He hesitated, then added, the child you carry, it matters too. New life connected to old ways. Continuation. Nora's hand went instinctively to her belly. Sterling doesn't know about the baby. Let's keep it that way. Logan's expression darkened. Man like that might see it as leverage. The thought sent ice through her veins. Sterling had already shown he'd stop at nothing to get what he wanted. What might he do if he knew she carried the next generation of Whitmans? We should rest, Logan said, noting her exhaustion. I'll take first watch. Nora didn't argue. The day's revelations and flight had drained her completely. She spread her bedroll on the sandy floor and lay down, one hand on her belly, the other clutching her father's journal. Despite her exhaustion, sleep proved elusive. The pendant seemed to grow warmer against her skin, and in the quiet darkness, she could swear she heard water flowing, not the tiny seep at the back of the cave, but something deeper, more substantial. A river running beneath the earth, calling to her in a language she'd never learned, but somehow understood. When sleep finally claimed her, she dreamed of silver pathways beneath the desert of water that glowed like moonlight, and of Matthew standing beside a pool so clear it reflected every star in the heavens. It was always meant for you, dream, Matthew told her. For our child. For the future. She woke some time later to Logan's gentle touch on her shoulder. The moon had shifted, casting different shadows across the cave floor. Someone's coming, he whispered. Single rider from the direction of town. Nora sat up, instantly alert. Sterling's men. Don't think so. Too careful. Moving like they're trying not to be spotted. They waited in tense silence, Logan with his rifle ready, Nora with Rose McAllister's small derringer. The horses sensed their anxiety, shifting restlessly in the darkness. Footsteps approached the cave entrance light, cautious. A silhouette appeared against the moonlit desert beyond. Mrs. Whitman, a voice called softly. Mr. Two Hawks. Are you in there? Nora recognized the voice. Mr. Williams. Howard Williams stepped into the cave, removing his hat. "Thank God I found you. Sterling's men are everywhere. They raided the trading post right after you left." Logan lowered his rifle but didn't set it aside. "Martha Key, safe. They got away before Sterling's men arrived." Williams wiped sweat from his brow. "Samuel Chen wasn't so lucky. They beat him badly trying to get information on your whereabouts." "Christ," Nora breathed. "Is he alive?" "Barely. Rose McAllister's tending to him." Williams moved further into the cave. "Martha sent me to find you. Said you'd need these." He produced a small bundle wrapped in hide. Inside were several objects: a small clay pot filled with something that smelled of sage and cedar, a pouch of what appeared to be cornmeal, and a folded paper covered in the same symbols from her father's journal. "She said you'd understand when the time came," Williams explained. "Something about a ceremony at the Living Water." Logan examined the items with reverent care. "Blessing tools. For purifying water, asking permission to approach sacred places." "Did Martha say anything else?" Nora asked. Williams nodded grimly. "Sterling's accelerated his plans. He's called in the note on your mortgage, says it's due in 3 days, not 11. And he's bringing in mining equipment by rail. Special shipment arriving tomorrow." 3 days. Nora felt the ground shift beneath her. "He can't do that. The terms were clear." "He owns the bank," Williams reminded her. "Who's going to stop him?" "The law," Nora said fiercely. "This is illegal. We need to get to Prescott, speak to the federal marshal." "That's why I'm here." Williams straightened. "Martha's arranged for a wagon to meet us at Dawn Crossing. Fast team supplies for the journey. We can be in Prescott by tomorrow night if we push hard." Logan studied the schoolteacher thoughtfully. "Why you, Mr. Williams? Why not one of her Navajo contacts? I have friends in Prescott, former colleagues from my law clerk days." Williams met Logan's gaze steadily. "And frankly, a black man with education draws less suspicion than a Navajo in these parts. Sterling's watching for you two, not me." It made sense, yet Nora noticed Logan's continued wariness. After the blood symbol on their cellar wall caution seemed wise. "We'll need to move the horses," she said. "Can't leave them here." Martha thought of that too. "There's a Navajo family waiting at Split Rock Canyon. They'll take the horses to reservation land, keep them safe until this is resolved." The plan was comprehensive, well thought out. Yet something nagged at Nora, a sense that they were missing a crucial piece of the puzzle. "The journals," she said suddenly. "My father's maps. They show the extent of the silver deposit, the connection to the water. We need that evidence for the marshal." "Of course," Williams gestured to her satchel. "Bring everything. Every piece of documentation helps our case." They prepared quickly, loading their meager supplies onto the horses. The pregnant bay mare seemed especially agitated, rolling her eyes and tossing her head at Williams's approach. "She doesn't like strangers," Nora explained, stroking the mare's neck soothingly. "Wise animal," Logan murmured, too low for Williams to hear. Then louder, "We should move out. Still a few hours till dawn." They rode single file through the moonlit desert, Williams leading Logan, bringing up the rear with the string of horses between them. The night was eerily still, not even coyotes breaking the silence. As they approached a narrow arroyo, Logan suddenly whistled a sharp, piercing sound that startled Nora. The horses bunched nervously. "What is it?" she called back. "Trap," he said tersely. "Riders waiting in the arroyo. At least 6. Williams reined in sharply. "How can you tell I don't see anything?" "Horse dung, fresh, and tobacco smoke on the wind." Logan's voice was cold. Strange place for a welcoming committee, Mr. Williams. The schoolteacher's posture changed subtly, tension replacing casual confidence. You're mistaken. Martha would never send us through Dead Man's Arroyo, Logan interrupted. It's taboo land. No Navajo would suggest this route. Joints stretched between them, taut as a bowstring. Then Williams reached inside his coat. Nora didn't think she fired the Derringer on pure instinct. The shot went wide, but startled Williams enough that he fumbled his own weapon. "Run!" Logan shouted, wheeling his horse. "Back to the cave!" Nora spurred her mount the horses, scattering in panic as riders burst from the arroyo behind them, shouting and firing. She bent low over her horse's neck, the thunder of hooves filling her ears. A bullet whined past her head. Another kicked up dust at her horse's feet. The mare surged forward, racing across the open desert toward the looming silhouette of the three sisters. Logan appeared beside her, his paint horse matching her mare stride for stride. "Keep going!" he shouted above the wind. "Don't stop!" Behind them, the pursuit spread out, trying to flank them. Williams was nowhere to be seen, either thrown in the chaos or hanging back to direct the others. They reached the rocks just ahead of their pursuers, diving into the narrow crevice that led to the cave. Inside, Logan pushed a heavy boulder across the entrance, not enough to seal it completely, but sufficient to slow anyone trying to follow. "Trap within a trap," he panted, checking his rifle. They were herding us toward the arroyo, probably had men waiting on both sides. "Williams?" Nora asked, still struggling to believe the schoolteacher's betrayal. "Working for Sterling. Has to be." Logan's face was grim in the faint moonlight filtering from above. "Question is, whether he was always Sterling's man or turned after we left the trading post." Nora clutched her father's satchel, grateful she hadn't entrusted it to Williams during their flight. "What now? They have us cornered." Logan was already moving deeper into the cave. "Maybe not. These old formations often have multiple exits. Natural chimneys, fissures." He ran his hands along the rear wall. "Help me look." They searched frantically, aware of voices and movement outside as Sterling's men surrounded the cave entrance. The horses shifted nervously, sensing danger. "Here!" Nora called suddenly, her fingers finding an irregularity in the stone. "There's a draft." Logan joined her, examining the narrow crack she'd discovered. It was barely visible, a darker shadow among shadows, but when he pressed his face close, he could feel cool air flowing outward. "It's tight," he warned. "May not be passable." "We have to try." Nora glanced toward the cave entrance, where lamplight now flickered as their pursuers prepared to enter. "No choice." Logan nodded grimly. "The horses, we can't take them." The realization hurt, but practicality overrode sentiment. "Maybe they'll be captured, not killed. Sterling values good horseflesh." "The bay mare," Logan insisted. "Your best bloodline. We take her if we can." There was no time to argue. They gathered the essentials: water, ammunition, her father's satchel, and approached the narrow fissure. Logan went first, squeezing sideways through the opening, testing whether it widened beyond. "It opens up," his voice echoed back. "There's a passage." Nora followed the rough stone scraping her shoulders as she pushed through. Behind her, she heard shouts as Sterling's men breached the makeshift barricade at the cave entrance. "They're in!" she gasped, wriggling faster. "Leave the mare," Logan decided reluctantly. "No time." The passage beyond the fissure was low but navigable, forcing them to crouch as they hurried forward. Behind them, angry voices echoed, followed by the sounds of men trying to follow through the narrow crack. "Too big," Logan observed with grim satisfaction. "Blackburn's boys are too well fed to follow." They pushed on the passage, gradually descending the air, growing cooler and damper. After what seemed like hours, but was probably only minutes, the tunnel widened into a larger chamber. Logan struck a match, revealing walls glittering with mineral deposits and a ceiling lost in darkness above. "Cave system," he whispered, voice filled with wonder. "These mountains are riddled with them. Some connect for miles." The match burned down, plunging them back into darkness, but not complete darkness ahead. Nora could make out a faint phosphorescence, a ghostly blue-green glow emanating from deeper in the cave. "What is that?" she breathed. "Don't know." Logan struck another match, using it to light a small torch he fashioned from a stick and a strip of cloth from his shirt. "Let's find out." They moved cautiously toward the glow, the passage widening further until they entered another chamber, this one vast enough that their torch barely illuminated the nearest walls. The source of the eerie light became clear pools of water dotted the cave floor, each glowing with that same otherworldly blue-green radiance. "The living water," Logan whispered reverently. Nora approached the nearest pool, kneeling beside it. The water was perfectly clear, the glow seeming to emanate from the minerals in the rock beneath rather than the liquid itself. When she tentatively touched the surface, ripples spread outward, intensifying the light momentarily. "It's responding to you," Logan observed, kneeling beside her. Nora's pendant felt warm against her skin, almost vibrating with energy. Without conscious thought, she removed it from her neck and held it above the water. The reaction was immediate and astonishing. The glow intensified tenfold, illuminating the entire chamber in brilliant blue-green light. On the ceiling above, previously invisible in the darkness, intricate paintings came to life. Handprints, spirals, animal figures, all surrounding a central image of a woman pouring water from a vessel shaped like the spiral in square symbol. "The water shrine," Logan breathed, awe evident in his voice. "It's real. The old stories were true." Nora could only stare, transfixed by the ancient images above and the luminous water below. Something stirred within her, a recognition deeper than memory, an understanding that transcended her conscious mind. "I know this place," she whispered. "I've never been here, but I know it." "Blood remembers," Logan said softly. "Your Navajo ancestors knew this shrine, prayed here, protected it." The pendant in her hand seemed to pulse with each beat of her heart. When she lowered it to touch the water's surface, the liquid parted around the silver spiral, creating a perfect miniature whirlpool that spun faster and faster until it appeared to drill into the rock itself. A rumbling shook the chamber stones, shifting overhead. Logan pulled Nora back, just as the pool's center collapsed, revealing a dark shaft descending into unknown depths. "What's happening?" she gasped. Before Logan could answer, water began to rise from the shaft. Not the gentle seep they'd seen elsewhere, but a powerful column that shot upward, then arced gracefully to fill the surrounding pools. Within moments, what had been small, scattered puddles became a substantial underground lake, the glowing water illuminating every corner of the vast chamber. "The living water," Logan said in hushed reverence. "It's returning." As the water level stabilized, something else rose from the shaft, a platform of stone, perfectly circular, its surface inscribed with the spiral in square symbol, writ large. Atop it rested a small clay vessel identical to the one in Howard Williams's bundle. "The blessing pot," Logan identified it, part of the old ceremony. Nora approached cautiously, drawn by an instinct she couldn't name. The pot was ancient but intact, its surface covered with faded symbols. When she picked it up, something inside shifted a liquid from the sound of it. "What do I do?" she asked, looking to Logan for guidance. "I'm not sure." He appeared equally awed by the unfolding events. The old ceremonies were secret, passed down through specific families. My grandmother would know. As if in answer, the pendant grew warmer in Nora's hand. Following instinct, she dipped it into the pot, coating the silver spiral with whatever substance lay within a thick, clay-like mixture that clung to the metal. When she withdrew it, the coated pendant began to steam slightly, giving off that same sweet sage scent she'd noticed at Martha's trading post. Without conscious decision, Nora found herself walking around the central pool, letting drops fall from the pendant into the glowing water, while words in a language she'd never spoken formed on her lips. Ta'aho aji tego, to e ina ate, nihima nahazan nihita hahadzwigi e ta'a ate. Water is life, Logan translated softly from behind her. Our Mother Earth sustains us. We honor the balance. The drops where the mixture touched the water began to spin, creating dozens of tiny whirlpools that grew and merged until the entire pool rotated slowly, like a giant liquid mirror reflecting the ancient paintings above. In that reflection, Nora saw images not of the cave ceiling, but of Promise Valley, as it had once been. Green meadows, flowing streams, the sacred spring, bubbling up from the earth, where people of all tribes gathered in peace. Then Sterling's mine, the depths, the water retreating underground in grief and protection. It's showing us the past, she whispered. What was lost? And what might be again, Logan added, pointing to new images forming in the spinning water. Promise Valley restored the deep water flowing once more, but this time protected by both native wisdom and legal safeguards. The silver left undisturbed in its ancient bed. As the vision faded, the water stilled its glow, diminishing to a soft luminescence. The pendant in Nora's hand had changed. The clay mixture had hardened and bonded with the silver, creating new patterns that matched the ancient paintings above. The blessing is complete, Logan said, though how he knew this he couldn't have explained. The living water has accepted you as its guardian. Nora felt different, centered, and certain, in a way she'd never experienced. The path forward, which had seemed so tangled and desperate hours before now, lay clear before her. We need to get to Prescott, she said. Not just to stop Sterling's foreclosure, but to register a legal claim under the Sacred Sites Protection Act. Logan looked surprised. How do you know about that? I didn't. Nora touched the transformed pendant. But I do now. It's as if the knowledge was always there, just waiting to be accessed. Before Logan could respond, a distant noise caught their attention, voices echoing from the passage they'd traveled. They've found a way through, he said tensely. We need to move. There! Nora pointed to the far side of the chamber where a narrow opening shimmered with daylight. Another way out. They crossed the underground lake quickly, stepping carefully on natural stone bridges that seemed to rise to meet their feet. The opening proved to be a fissure in the rock face of the mountain itself, hidden from casual observation by overhanging brush, but wide enough for them to squeeze through. Outside, the eastern sky was just beginning to lighten with dawn. They found themselves on a steep slope overlooking a valley Nora didn't recognize. Not Promise Valley, but somewhere beyond the Three Sisters. Where are we? She asked, trying to get her bearings. Logan oriented himself quickly. North side of the ridge. Prescott's that way about 30 miles. He pointed west. 2 days on foot if we push hard. And Sterling's men, they'll expect us to head back to the trading post or your ranch. Might buy us some time. He surveyed their meager supplies. Water won't be a problem now. Food's limited, but we can forage. Nora touched her belly, suddenly aware of the additional life she was responsible for. The baby. Logan's expression softened. We'll take it steady. Rest when needed. He hesitated, then added, "The living water has blessed both of you. That counts for something even on the hardest trails." They began their journey as the sun crested the horizon, picking their way down the rocky slope toward the valley below. Despite the danger behind and the uncertainty ahead, Nora felt a strange sense of peace. The pendant warm against her skin seemed to pulse with each heartbeat of the earth beneath her feet. By nightfall, they'd covered nearly 15 miles following game trails and dry creek beds to avoid the main paths where Sterling's men might search. They made camp in a small grove of juniper, the trees providing both shelter and the makings of a small, nearly smokeless fire. As they shared their meager rations, jerky dried fruit, and a handful of pine nuts Logan had gathered along the way, Nora spread her father's maps on the ground, studying them by firelight. "There's something here I missed before," she said, pointing to a series of notations along what appeared to be the path of an underground stream. These dates, they correspond to entries in his journal about water levels in the well. Logan leaned closer, examining the markings. He was tracking the underground flow, how it changed with seasons, with rainfall. "Yes, but look here." She indicated a point where the stream divided one branch heading toward their ranch, the other toward the Three Sisters. He notes junction point and control mechanism. Control mechanism, Logan frowned, like a dam or sluice gate. "I think so." Nora flipped through the journal until she found the corresponding entry. "Installed regulator at junction point," she read. "Can now direct flow as needed between home supply and mine shaft. Essential for dry years." Understanding dawned in Logan's eyes. "Your father built a way to control the underground water flow. That's why your well never ran dry even in drought years. Until Sterling's men found it and diverted everything away from the ranch." Nora traced the path with her finger. "The question is, where exactly is this junction point, and can we use it to restore the water to its natural course?" They pored over the maps and journals late into the night, piecing together clues from her father's meticulous notes. The junction appeared to be located approximately a mile from the ranch house, beneath a distinctive rock formation her father had labeled simply as Guardian Stone. "I know that place," Nora said, memory stirring. "A big boulder shaped almost like a seated figure. Dad used to take me there as a child, told me stories about the stone watching over our land." "Hidden in plain sight," Logan observed. "Clever man, your father. So if we can reach this control mechanism, we might be able to restore the natural flow, bring water back to your ranch and the surrounding land." Logan's expression was thoughtful. "But more importantly, we'd have physical evidence of tampering proof that Sterling deliberately diverted your water to force foreclosure. Evidence the federal marshal would have to act on," Nora concluded, "regardless of Sterling's influence." A plan began to form between them. Reach Prescott, secure legal protection for the sacred site through the little-known but powerful Sacred Sites Protection Act, then return with federal authorities to document the water diversion and stop the foreclosure. But time remained their enemy. Even with the mortgage deadline extended back to its original 11 days, they faced a tight schedule: 2 days to reach Prescott, at least a day to navigate the legal process, and 2 more to return with authorities. "We should rest," Logan said finally, noting Nora's exhaustion. "Long journey tomorrow." They settled by the small fire closer than strictly necessary for warmth. The night around them hummed with insect sounds, punctuated by the occasional call of a hunting owl. "Do you think Martha is safe?" Nora asked, staring into the flames. "And the others who helped us. My grandmother is hard to catch," Logan said with a hint of pride. "She survived worse than Sterling. As for the others," he shrugged. "Rose McAllister is respected in town. Sterling would hesitate to move openly against her." Samuel Chen, I worry for him. He was badly hurt, according to Williams. Williams, Nora spat the name. I trusted him. We all did. Sterling's money reaches far. Or perhaps he threatened Williams's school, his students. Logan's expression darkened. Men find many reasons to betray their principles. They fell silent, each contemplating the fragile nature of trust and loyalty in a world where power and desperation shaped so many choices. When this is over, Nora said finally, what will you do? Return to drifting. The question hung between them, weighted with unspoken implications. Logan stared into the fire, the flames reflecting in his dark eyes. Once I would have said yes without hesitation. His voice was low, thoughtful. The open road, no roots, no responsibilities. It felt like freedom. And now, he looked at her, then his gaze steady. Now I'm not so sure freedom means what I thought it did. Maybe true freedom comes from choosing your connections, not avoiding them. The words settled around Nora like a warm blanket. Connections to the land, to the water. To those, he agreed. And to people. To a future that might be worth building. His hand found hers in the firelight fingers, intertwining with a naturalness that belied their short acquaintance. In that touch, Nora felt possibilities stretching before them, not just survival, but a life rebuilt from the ashes of what had been lost. I'd like that, she said simply. They slept that night side by side, not as lovers, but as partners in a journey neither had anticipated, but both now embraced fully. The pendant, transformed by the living water, glowed softly between them, a beacon in the desert night. Dawn found them already moving, following a deer trail that wound through stands of pinon pine toward the distant silhouette of Granite Mountain, the landmark that would guide them to Prescott. The day promised brutal heat, the sun rising into a cloudless sky that offered no hint of mercy. By mid-morning, they'd covered another 5 miles, rationing their water carefully, despite Logan's assurance that they could find more if needed. The terrain grew increasingly rugged, forcing them to pick their way through boulder fields and across steep-sided arroyos. As they crested a rise overlooking a broad, sage-dotted plain, Logan suddenly froze, dropping into a crouch and pulling Nora down beside him. "Riders," he whispered, pointing to a dust cloud in the distance. "Coming this way." Nora squinted against the sun's glare. Sterling's men? Can't tell. Moving fast, though. Logan surveyed their surroundings with a practiced eye. Not much cover here. We need to move. They retreated down the slope, seeking the shelter of a nearby wash lined with cottonwoods. The trees, though struggling in the drought, provided enough cover to conceal them if the riders passed nearby. Crouched among the exposed roots, they waited tensely as the sound of hoofbeats grew closer. Logan had his rifle ready, while Nora clutched her father's satchel, determined that the precious documents wouldn't fall into Sterling's hands. The riders crested the rise they'd just vacated, silhouetted against the sky. 3 men moving at a steady lope, scanning the terrain ahead. "Not Sterling's men," Logan whispered, surprise evident in his voice. "Navajo. Look at the way they sit their horses." As if to confirm his assessment, the lead rider raised a hand in the distinctive gesture of Navajo scouts, palm out, fingers spread. "They're looking for us," Logan realized. "My grandmother must have sent them." He stood cautiously, raising his own hand in response. The riders immediately altered course, heading directly for their hiding place. As they drew closer, Nora recognized the leader, Faustin Begay the Elder, who had spoken to her at the trading post gathering. With him rode 2 younger men, each armed with rifles, but dressed in traditional Navajo garb. "Ya Atié," Faustin Begay greeted them, dismounting with the dignity of his advanced years. We have been searching since sunrise. How did you find us? Logan asked, clasping the old man's hand in respect. The water told us. Begay's weathered face creased in a slight smile. And Martha Running Bear, who sees farther than most. My grandmother, she's safe. Safe, yes. Angry, also, yes. The old man's eyes twinkled briefly. Sterling's men came too late. She and the others had already moved to the old summer camp, hidden from those who do not know where to look. Relief washed through Logan. And the town. What news? Begay's expression sobered. Bad. Sterling has declared martial law, claiming Indian uprising. Hired gunmen patrol the streets. The sheriff, who was never much help, is locked in his own jail for opposing Sterling's orders. What about Samuel Chen? Nora asked. And Rose McAllister. The Chinese man was taken to the reservation by our medicine women. He lives, but recovery will be slow. The white woman disappeared after helping him escape. No one knows where. The news was both better and worse than they'd feared. At least their allies lived, but Sterling's bold move to seize control of the town raised the stakes dramatically. We're headed to Prescott, Nora explained, to seek help from the federal marshal, file a claim under the Sacred Sites Protection Act. Faustine Begay nodded approvingly. A good plan, but the direct path is watched. Sterling has men at all the major crossings. Is there another way? Logan asked. Always another way for those who know the old paths. Begay gestured to his companions. We brought extra horses, strong ones that know the hidden trails. And this. From his saddlebag, he withdrew a small bundle wrapped in red cloth. Inside lay a silver badge, a six-pointed star inscribed with the words, United States Marshal. Where did you get this? Nora asked, astonished. Marshal Griffin was traveling to Promise Valley when he heard of the trouble, met with Martha at the summer camp. Begay's expression was solemn. He asked us to find you, bring you to him, said some matters cannot wait for formal complaints in Prescott. It seemed almost too fortunate to believe. How do we know this is genuine? Logan asked, caution evident in his voice. After Williams's betrayal, wise to question. Begay approved. The marshal said to tell you Joseph Whitman saved my life at Glorietta Pass. I owe his daughter a debt of honor. Nora's breath caught. My father fought at Glorietta Pass. He never spoke of it much, but there was a letter from a Union officer named Griffin among his papers. The coincidence, if it was coincidence, seemed too precise to dismiss. And the badge appeared genuine, the silver tarnished with age and use rather than freshly minted. Take us to him, she decided. They mounted the fresh horses following Faustine Begay and his companions on a winding path that skirted the open plain, keeping to patches of juniper and rocky outcroppings that provided cover from distant observers. The Navajo moved with the confidence of men traveling routes known for generations, invisible trails, marked by subtle signs only they could read. By late afternoon, they'd reached a hidden valley nestled between two nameless ridges. A small stream trickled through its center, barely a foot wide, but precious in the drought-stricken land. Near the water, several wickiups had been constructed in the traditional Navajo style, with a larger canvas tent erected nearby. From this tent emerged a tall man in dusty trail clothes, his weathered face framed by iron-gray hair and a neatly trimmed beard. The silver badge on his vest caught the sunlight as he approached. Eleanor Whitman, he said, removing his hat. You look just like your father. Same determined chin. Marshal Griffin. Nora dismounted, studying him carefully. You knew my father. Served together briefly during the war. He was a civilian scout for my unit. Griffin's eyes held the steady gaze of a man accustomed to measuring truth. Saved me and 20 other men from a Confederate ambush at Glorietta Pass. Never forgot it." He turned to Logan, extending his hand. "And you must be too, Hawks. Martha speaks highly of you, which I gather is not her usual approach." Logan shook the offered hand, his wariness gradually easing. "She's complicated. Most worthwhile people are." Griffin gestured toward the tent. "Come, we have much to discuss and little time." Inside the tent was spartanly furnished, but contained what they needed most: a folding table spread with maps of the territory, legal documents, and, most importantly, a telegraph transcript dated the previous day. "I've been investigating Maxwell Sterling for over a year," Griffin explained without preamble. "Land fraud, water rights violations, intimidation of federal witnesses. But he's careful, leaves few traces, uses intermediaries for the dirty work." "Like Raymond Blackburn," Nora supplied. "Blackburn, yes, and others." Griffin tapped the telegraph transcript. "This arrived yesterday from Washington. Authorization to arrest Sterling on federal charges if I can provide sufficient evidence." "We have evidence," Nora said, eagerly producing her father's satchel. "Maps showing the illegal dam on federal land journals, documenting the silver mine and its danger to the water supply, even this." She touched the transformed pendant. "Proof of the sacred site beneath the Three Sisters." Griffin examined the materials with professional thoroughness, paying particular attention to the maps showing the underground water routes. "This junction point," he said, indicating the spot her father had labeled control mechanism. "Can you locate it precisely?" "Yes, it's near a formation called Guardian Stone about a mile from my ranch house." "And you believe Sterling's men have tampered with it to divert water away from your property?" "We know they have," Logan interjected. "The well ran dry too suddenly for natural causes, and we found evidence of recent digging near the old stream bed." Griffin nodded, satisfaction evident in his expression. "That's the physical evidence I needed. Water rights violations on federal land are under my jurisdiction regardless of territorial politics." "So you'll help us?" Nora asked, hope rising in her chest. "Better than that." Griffin's smile was grimly determined. "I'm going to arrest Sterling and his entire operation. Today's telegraph brought confirmation he's been illegally filing mining claims on Navajo treaty land for years using forged documents and strawman owners. The scale of Sterling's corruption was staggering. Not just her ranch, not just Promise Valley, but a systematic campaign to seize control of water and mineral rights across the territory. "When do we move?" Logan asked. "Dawn tomorrow." Griffin traced a route on the map. "We'll approach Promise Valley from the north, documenting the illegal dam first, then proceed to town with full federal authority." "And my mortgage?" Nora couldn't help asking. "Sterling's accelerated it. It claims it's due in 3 days." "Illegal, of course. Once he's arrested, all his financial dealings will be frozen pending investigation." Griffin's expression softened slightly. "Your ranch is safe, Mrs. Whitman. Your father's legacy will endure." The words brought unexpected tears to Nora's eyes. After days of desperate flight and uncertainty, the simple assurance that her home, Matthew's home, their child's future home, was secure, felt like more than she could absorb. "Thank you," she managed. Griffin nodded once, understanding more than she'd said. "Rest now, both of you. Tomorrow will bring its own challenges." Outside the tent, the day was fading toward evening. The western sky painted in shades of gold and crimson. Navajo women moved quietly among the wickiups preparing the evening meal. Children played near the small stream, their laughter carrying on the cooling air. Nora found a place to sit beside the water, watching its gentle flow over stones worn smooth by centuries of patient erosion. Logan joined her after a time, settling beside her in companionable silence. "It seems too easy," she said, finally, voicing the doubt that had been growing since their meeting with Griffin. "After everything Sterling's done, all his power and influence to be stopped by a single federal marshal and some old maps." "Not just maps," Logan reminded her, gesturing to the pendant at her throat. "The living water chose its moment. And Griffin's been building his case for a year, just waiting for the final evidence." Still, Nora trailed her fingers through the stream, watching ripples spread outward. "Sterling won't go quietly. He has weapons, control of the town. True, but Griffin has federal authority. And this," Logan indicated the Navajo camp around them. "Community. People working together against a common threat, stronger than any one man's ambition." The simple truth of it settled around Nora like a familiar blanket. Community. Connection. The very things Sterling had tried to destroy by isolating her, by pitting neighbor against neighbor in the fight for water. Yet here they were, Navajo elders, a federal marshal, a mixed-blood scout, and a widow carrying new life united by something larger than individual interest or profit. The water that sustained them all, that demanded respect rather than exploitation. As the first stars appeared overhead, Nora felt the pendant warm against her skin, a gentle reminder of promises made in the glowing chamber beneath the three sisters, not just to protect the water, but to ensure it flowed freely for all who needed it. Tomorrow would bring confrontation, perhaps violence. Sterling would not surrender his ambitions easily. But for tonight, beside this humble stream with Logan at her shoulder and her child growing within, Nora allowed herself to believe in the possibility of justice. The water would flow again in Promise Valley, and with it, perhaps a new understanding of what it meant to truly belong to this harsh but beautiful land. Dawn came soft as a whisper, pale light filtering through morning mist that clung to the hidden valley. Marshal Griffin's small force assembled quietly. Griffin himself, 3 deputies who had joined him the previous evening, Logan and Nora, and 6 Navajo men, including Hostine Begay, all armed and mounted on steady horses. "We approach the dam first," Griffin reminded them, checking his Winchester one last time. "Document the illegal diversion, then proceed to town. Sterling is to be taken alive if at all possible. Evidence is our strongest weapon." They rode out as the sun cleared the eastern ridge, following a route that would bring them to Promise Valley from the north, approaching the illegal dam site from federal land, where Griffin's authority was absolute. The journey was slow but steady, each rider alert for signs of Sterling's patrols. By mid-morning, they'd reached the vantage point above the stream bed where Nora and Logan had first discovered the dam. Griffin surveyed the crude structure with professional disgust. "Textbook violation," he noted as one of his deputies photographed the scene with a bulky camera. "Unauthorized construction on federal land, willful diversion of a natural watercourse, interference with downstream water rights." They dismounted, examining the dam more closely. Recent work was evident, fresh timber supports newly turned earth. Sterling had been reinforcing the structure, ensuring no water reached Nora's ranch. "Look here," Logan called, crouching near the base of the dam. Blackburn's brand. Burned into one of the support timbers was a distinctive mark, the same 5-pointed star as his signature spur. "Man likes to take credit for his work," Griffin observed, instructing his deputy to photograph the brand. That put Sterling's chief enforcer directly at the scene. With the evidence documented, they remounted and continued toward Promise Valley proper. As they crested the final ridge overlooking the town, Nora gasped at the transformation. What had been a dusty but functional frontier settlement now resembled an armed camp. Men with rifles patrolled the single main street, while others had established checkpoints at the major approaches. The Sterling Mining Company office, once a modest building near the bank, now flew a large company flag and appeared to be serving as headquarters for the operation. "Looks like he's expecting trouble," one of Griffin's deputies observed. "Or planning something big," Griffin replied grimly. "Those supply wagons at the north end of town mining equipment. Heavy stuff." Logan nodded agreement. "He's preparing to reopen the silver mine. Probably planning to move as soon as he forecloses on the Whitman place." Griffin studied the town layout, formulating a plan. "We'll approach from the east along the creek bed. Less visible that way. Deputies Harker and Wilson, you'll secure the sheriff's office free. Any legitimate law officers Sterling's imprisoned. Begay, you and your men cover the south approach, prevent any escape in that direction." He turned to Ponta and Logan. "You two stay with me. We're heading straight for Sterling's office. Federal warrant trumps whatever authority he thinks he has." The plan was straightforward, but depended on the element of surprise and the weight of federal authority. If Sterling's men chose to resist, despite Griffin's badge, the small force would be badly outnumbered. As they prepared to descend into the valley, a strange sound caught Nora's attention, a low rumbling almost like distant thunder, though the sky remained clear. "Do you hear that?" she asked Logan. He nodded, expression puzzled. "Not hoofbeats, not wagons either." The rumbling grew louder, and suddenly Nora understood. "Water," she breathed. "A lot of water." They turned toward the sound's source, the ridge to the west near the Three Sisters. There a dark line was advancing across the landscape, a wave front of moisture transforming the parched earth as it passed. "The living water," Logan said in hushed reverence. "It's returning to the surface." Before their astonished eyes, the dry stream bed below began to glisten, then to flow, water appearing as if conjured from the earth itself. The flow strengthened rapidly, becoming a proper creek, then a substantial stream rushing toward Promise Valley. The ceremony at the shrine, Nora realized, touching her pendant. It worked. The deep water is reclaiming its original course. Griffin stared in amazement. "I've seen flash floods before, but never water appearing from nowhere like this." "Not nowhere," Faustine Begay corrected gently. "Everywhere. The water was always there beneath. Now it rises again, as it was meant to." And the advancing water reached the town, flowing down the previously dry creek bed that bisected Promise Valley. People emerged from buildings, pointing and shouting in wonder as the parched channel filled before their eyes. "This changes things," Griffin decided. "Sterling's men will be distracted. We move now before they can reorganize." They descended swiftly, following the newly flowing creek into town. As predicted, the sudden appearance of water had created confusion, with many of Sterling's guards abandoning their posts to witness the miracle. Griffin's deputies peeled off toward the sheriff's office, while Begay and his men circled south. Griffin, Nora, and Logan rode directly to the Sterling Mining Company headquarters, dismounting at the hitching rail out front. "Stay behind me," Griffin instructed, adjusting his badge so it caught the sunlight. "Federal authority may not mean much to Sterling, but his men might think twice about firing on a U.S. Marshal." They ascended the steps to find the door already open, voices raised in argument within. Griffin entered first, his presence filling the doorway, badge gleaming on his chest. "Maxwell Sterling," he announced in a voice accustomed to command, "I have a federal warrant for your arrest on charges of water rights violations, land fraud, and conspiracy against the United States government." The scene inside froze in tableau, Sterling behind his desk. Blackburn and 3 other men arranged around the room, all turning to stare at the intrusion. Sterling recovered first, his aristocratic features arranging themselves into a mask of affronted dignity. "Marshal Griffin, this is a surprise, and an unwelcome one at that. This is a private business meeting." "Not anymore." Griffin stepped fully into the room, hand resting near his sidearm. You're operating an illegal mining operation on federal land, diverting water from legally established claims and using armed men to enforce private interests against public good. Sterling's eyes narrowed, shifting to Nora and Logan as they entered behind Griffin. Ah, I see you've been listening to disgruntled parties with personal grievances. Hardly the basis for federal action. The evidence speaks for itself. Griffin gestured toward the window where the newly flowing creek was visible. Including that, care to explain how a dry stream bed suddenly starts flowing after years of drought? Natural phenomenon, Sterling dismissed. Perhaps rain in the mountains. Or perhaps the living water returning to its rightful course, Nora said, stepping forward with the pendant visible at her throat. Water that you tried to steal, just like you tried to steal my land. Sterling's composure slipped for an instant, his gaze fixing on the silver spiral. That trinket proves nothing. This does. Nora placed her father's journal on the desk open to the page, documenting the silver mine disaster. 16 men dead because you pushed too far too fast. My father covered for you then. I won't make the same mistake. Color drained from Sterling's face. Your father was a fool who didn't understand progress. The silver deposit beneath your worthless ranch could make this entire territory rich. At the cost of poisoning every water source for 50 miles, Logan interjected. The arsenic in that silver has already killed once. You're willing to risk hundreds more lives for profit. Sterling's laugh was bitter. Progress requires sacrifice. The weak make way for the strong. It's nature's law. It's not the law of this territory, Griffin countered, producing his warrant. Raymond Blackburn, you're also under arrest for water rights violations, assault and conspiracy. Throughout the exchange, Blackburn had been slowly shifting position, moving away from Sterling toward the side door. Now, with a sudden movement, he drew his pistol. I don't think so, Marshal. Everything happened at once. Griffin dove sideways as Blackburn fired the bullet, splintering the doorframe. Logan tackled Nora to the floor as Sterling's other men reached for weapons. Outside, shouts and gunfire erupted as the deputies engaged Sterling's guards. Griffin rolled behind a desk, returning fire with controlled precision. One of Sterling's men fell, clutching his shoulder. Another backed toward the window, only to find Hosteen Bigay and his Navajo companions arriving outside, rifles leveled. Blackburn, seeing the odds shift, grabbed Sterling by the collar. Back door, now! They disappeared through a side door as Griffin scrambled to his feet. Stay here, he ordered Nora and Logan. This just became a manhunt. But Nora, sprawled on the floor where Logan had pushed her, had seen something the others missed. Sterling dropping a folded paper as Blackburn dragged him away. She crawled forward, retrieving it, as Griffin rushed after the fleeing men. What is it? Logan asked, helping her to her feet. Nora unfolded the document, eyes widening as she scanned its contents. A map. To the junction point, the control mechanism for the underground water. It's not where my father's journals indicated. It's at the silver mine itself. Understanding dawned in Logan's eyes. Sterling wasn't just planning to reopen the mine. He was going to destroy the water source completely. Make sure no one could ever restore it. Outside, the gunfire had intensified. Through the window, they could see Griffin and his deputies exchanging shots with Sterling's men, who had taken cover behind supply wagons and water troughs. Griffin can handle Sterling's guards, Nora decided. We need to secure that junction point before Blackburn and Sterling reach it. They're probably headed there now, Logan agreed. It's their last chance to control the water. Without waiting for Griffin's permission, they slipped out the back door of the office, finding their horses still tethered nearby. Mounting quickly, they galloped out of town following the newly flowing creek toward its source near the Three Sisters. The water grew stronger as they rode the stream, widening and deepening with each mile. Where dust and cracked earth had dominated the landscape days before now, moisture spread outward from the creek bed plants, already responding with tentative green shoots. "It's healing," Nora observed wonderingly. "The land is healing itself." Logan nodded, eyes scanning the terrain ahead. "The old ones say water has memory. It remembers where it's supposed to flow." They reached the Three Sisters as the sun reached its zenith, the rock formation casting deep shadows across the desert floor. Near its base, the sealed mine entrance was now surrounded by a substantial pool water bubbling up from fissures in the rock. And there, standing beside the pool, with expressions of impotent rage, were Sterling and Blackburn. "You're too late," Sterling spat as Nora and Logan dismounted. "The control mechanism is underwater now. No one can reach it." "That was the point," Nora replied calmly. "The living water protecting itself. It knew what you planned." "Superstitious nonsense." Sterling's aristocratic facade had crumbled entirely, revealing the desperate greed beneath. "That water belongs to me. The silver belongs to me. This entire valley should be mine." "Water belongs to no one," Logan said. "And the silver will remain where it lies, sealed away with its poison." Blackburn, ever practical, seemed to recognize their position was hopeless. He backed away slightly, separating himself from Sterling. "Boss, we should go. There'll be other opportunities." "No," Sterling's voice rose to a near shriek. "I've waited 20 years, planned, manipulated, bought every official in the territory. I won't be stopped by a widow and a half-breed." With surprising speed for a man his age, Sterling drew a derringer from his vest pocket and aimed at Nora. Logan moved to intercept, but distance favored Sterling. The shot rang out, echoing off the rock face, but it was Sterling who staggered, a look of profound surprise crossing his features as he dropped to his knees, then fell face first into the pool. Behind him stood Rose McAllister, a small pistol identical to the one she'd given Nora, still smoking in her hand. "That was for Frank," she said simply, "and for everyone else you destroyed." Blackburn, recognizing the shifting odds, raised his hands slowly. "I was just following orders. Just doing my job." "Your job included poisoning my horses and threatening a widow," Nora said coldly. "I'm sure Marshal Griffin will be interested in discussing your definition of employment." As if summoned by her words, Griffin appeared over the ridge, accompanied by his deputies and several townspeople. The marshal took in the scene with a professional eye. Sterling's body floating in the pool. Blackburn with his hands raised, Rose McAllister still holding her small pistol. "Mrs. McAllister," Griffin said with careful neutrality, "I see you've resolved one of our problems." "Self-defense, Marshal," Rose replied steadily. "He drew first. Ask them." She nodded toward Nora and Logan. Griffin's expression suggested he might have his own opinion on the matter, but he merely nodded. "We'll sort it out in Prescott. Mr. Blackburn, you're under arrest for multiple violations of federal law. Deputies secure him." As Blackburn was led away, the townspeople approached the pool cautiously, marveling at the water now flowing freely from beneath the rock. Among them, Nora recognized familiar faces: Samuel Chen, bandaged but upright, supported by Martha Running Bear, Pastor Thompson and his wife, even Sheriff Wilson, released from his own jail by Griffin's deputies. "Is it safe?" someone asked, gesturing to the water. "With Sterling in it, I mean." "Water cleanses itself," Martha answered, her obsidian eyes meeting Nora's across the pool. "The living water more than most." As if to confirm her words, the pool began to shift currents forming around Sterling's body, drawing it gently toward the sealed mine entrance. Before their astonished eyes, a fissure opened in the concrete seal just large enough to admit the corpse. Sterling's body slipped beneath the surface and was gone, the fissure closing behind him as if it had never existed. "The silver claims its own," Faustine Begay observed quietly. "The balance is restored." A hush fell over the gathering, the only sound the gentle burbling of water finding its ancient pathways once more. The pendant at Nora's throat pulsed once warm against her skin, then settled to its normal temperature. "What happens now?" Sheriff Wilson asked, breaking the silence. "The bank, the mortgage, Sterling's other holdings. Federal receivership," Griffin answered. "His assets will be audited, his illegal claims reversed. Those who can prove damages will receive compensation." "And the water?" Nora asked the question that mattered most. "Water rights revert to their original holders," Griffin confirmed, "with federal oversight to prevent future monopolization." It was more than Nora had dared hope for when she'd first discovered her well running dry. Not just her ranch saved, but the entire valley protected from exploitation, the sacred water sources recognized and preserved. Martha Running Bear approached, her ancient eyes filled with quiet satisfaction. "The Guardian has fulfilled her purpose," she said, gesturing to Nora's pendant. "The living water flows again for all the people, red, white, and every shade between." "I didn't do much," Nora demurred. "The water itself chose to return." "Because you listened," Martha corrected. "When others would command, you listened. This is the first wisdom." The gathering gradually dispersed, people returning to town with news of Sterling's death and the miraculous return of water to Promise Valley. Griffin and his deputies departed with Blackburn in custody, promising to return with the necessary paperwork to officially clear Nora's mortgage and document the federal protection of the sacred spring. As sunset painted the three sisters in shades of gold and crimson, Nora found herself alone with Logan beside the pool, watching the water ripple in patterns that seemed almost deliberate, as if writing messages they had yet to learn to read. "Your father would be proud," Logan said quietly. "You protected his legacy. Both legacies, the ranch and the sacred water." "Our legacy now," Nora corrected, taking his hand. "Yours, mine, the baby's. If you're staying, that is." Logan's fingers tightened around hers. "Wild horses couldn't drag me away." The simple declaration, spoken without flourish or fanfare, sealed something between them, a promise as ancient and enduring as the water flowing at their feet. As darkness fell, they made their way back toward the ranch house, following the creek that now ran full and sweet along its original course. The land already seemed to be responding to the water's return, a subtle greening visible even in the fading light. The Whitman ranch stood much as they had left it, the damage from Sterling's men still evident, but somehow less significant now. With water restored and the mortgage threat removed, repairs could wait for morning. Inside, Nora lit the lamps, the familiar space welcoming them despite the disarray. They worked together to right overturned furniture, sweep up broken crockery, restore some semblance of order to the violated home. In the kitchen, Logan built a fire in the stove, while Nora prepared a simple meal from the supplies Griffin's deputies had brought from town. The domestic routine felt both strange and right, as if they'd been sharing this space for years rather than days. After they'd eaten, Nora opened her father's journal one last time, turning to the final pages she hadn't fully examined before. There, in Joseph Whitman's meticulous hand, was a letter addressed to her. "My dearest Eleanor," it began, "if you are reading this, then the time has come for the truth about our land and its water to be revealed. The silver beneath our ranch is both blessing and curse, valuable beyond measure, but deadly if disturbed. I made a terrible mistake in partnering with Sterling to extract it, a mistake that cost 16 good men their lives. Since then, I have dedicated my life to protecting both the silver and the living water that flows beneath our feet. You carry the blood of the people through your mother, whose Navajo heritage she never knew, but which flows in your veins nonetheless. This connection is not coincidence, but purpose. The old ones believe that in each generation a guardian is chosen to protect the living water. I was merely a temporary caretaker. You, my daughter, are its true guardian. The pendant I sometimes wore bears the mark of this responsibility. When the time is right, it will find its way to you. Trust in the water, Eleanor. It knows more than we can comprehend with our limited vision. It remembers the past and flows toward the future, carrying both healing and wisdom to those who listen. The letter continued with practical matters, the location of important documents, advice on managing the ranch, his hopes for her future. But it was the final paragraph that brought tears to Nora's eyes. Know that I am proud of you, my daughter. Whatever choices you make, whatever paths you follow, you carry with you my love and the blessing of the living water. May it flow through your life as it flows through our land, bringing growth, renewal, and the courage to face whatever challenges arise. All my love, your father, Joseph. As Nora folded the letter, a sense of completion settled around her. Connections that had seemed random. Her meeting with Logan, the discovery of her heritage, the water appearing at Matthew's grave now revealed themselves as parts of a pattern too vast to fully comprehend, but undeniably purposeful. Logan, who had given her privacy to read the letter, now returned to the kitchen. Horses are settled, he reported. Creeks already reached the lower pasture. By morning, the whole ranch will have water again. Nora nodded, rising from the table with the letter in hand. My father knew about everything, the water, my heritage, even that someday the guardian role would pass to me. The old ones say nothing happens without purpose, Logan replied. Paths cross when they are meant to. Outside, the newly flowing creek sang its ancient song, water, finding its way across land that had thirsted for too long. Above, stars scattered across the desert sky like silver dust. Eternal witnesses to the cycles of destruction and renewal that shaped the harsh land below. Nora moved to the window, gazing out at the starlit landscape, her land, her heritage, her future. The pendant at her throat caught the lamplight, the silver spiral seeming to move like flowing water within its square border. Tomorrow, she said softly, we begin rebuilding. Logan joined her at the window, his presence solid and reassuring at her side. Not just the ranch, he added, the whole valley. A new way of living with the water respecting its power. Teaching others what we've learned, Nora agreed. His hand found hers in the lamplight, fingers intertwining with the ease of long familiarity, though their acquaintance spanned mere days. In that touch, Nora felt possibilities unfolding, not just survival, but a life richer and more connected than she had dared to imagine after Matthew's death. The child within her stirred, as if sensing the shift in its mother's spirit, from grief to hope. This baby would know both heritages, both traditions, the practical knowledge of the settlers and the sacred wisdom of the Navajo. A bridge between worlds, just as the living water connected surface and depths past and future. Outside, a coyote called to the rising moon, its voice neither mournful nor threatening, but simply alive, part of the desert symphony that had played for centuries before human settlement and would continue long after. The creek answered with its own music, water flowing over stone in eternal conversation. Nora leaned against Logan's shoulder, exhaustion and relief mingling in equal measure. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, repairs to the ranch, legal proceedings against Sterling's associates, the gradual healing of a community fractured by greed and fear. But tonight, with water flowing once more through Promise Valley and Logan's steady presence beside her, Nora allowed herself to believe in the future her father had foreseen. A future where water flowed freely for all, where ancient wisdom and modern knowledge worked in harmony, where life could flourish, even in the harshest conditions. The living water had returned, bringing with it not just physical sustenance, but a deeper healing, the restoration of balance between taking and giving, between profit and stewardship, between individual desire and communal need. And in that balance lay the true promise of Promise Valley.